like to call back the Board of Education meeting. Item 4.0, the Pledge of Allegiance. It will be led by Lucero Rodriguez from Burbank High School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lucero Rodriguez is in the 11th grade at Luther Burbank High School. She was a student ambassador this summer, providing support and mentoring incoming 7th graders at Rosa Parks Middle School. She is respected by her peers and for her outstanding leadership skills during summer of service. Lucero was only 7 years old when she migrated here with her mother, and she is the youngest of 4. Lucero shared that her family has experienced many challenges, but have managed to overcome them, and with the ongoing encouragement and support of her mother, she has excelled in her education. She would like to go to New York University for college and major in law. Lucero recently received the President's Award for Educational Excellence. The award honors students for their achievement and hard work. The program has provided individual recognition from the President and the U.S. Secretary of Education to those students whose outstanding efforts have enabled them to meet challenging standards of excellence. Congratulations, and in recognition of leadership and achievement, we are proud to recognize Lucero V. Rodriguez of the Sacramento City Unified School District Stellar Student.
Good evening. I just wanted to say thank you to everything for the honor and to have my mother by my side. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will be replayed Sunday, August 18th at 9 a.m. and Monday, August 19th at noon on Channel 14 and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the community room and give it to our Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Gabe Ross, to my right. Prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation, please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district website prior to the next board meeting. Excuse me. Please limit comments during public comment to items not listed on the agenda. If you're found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you'll be asked to defer until your item comes up on the agenda. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate. Item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
Yes, Mr. President. The board, by a vote of 5-0 with board members Arroyo and Rodriguez absent, adopted Resolution 2013-G regarding the dismissal of a certificated employee. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. I will move the agenda. Second by Vice President Kennedy. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have adopted the agenda. Item 7.0, public comment, Mr. Ross.
We have 5 comments on 7.0. The comments are from Jess Cerna, Max Mendoza, Cheyenne Camargo, Victoria Camargo, and Jessica Arriaga.
Oh. Timer's not working. Well, don't take advantage of us. Our timer's not working.
I know how that works. President Cunio, members of the board, Superintendent Raymond, I just wanted to take this opportunity, as some of you may or may not know, I will soon be exiting and retiring after 30 years of service, of public service. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, especially Superintendent Raymond, for giving me the honor and privilege to have been part of such a great district and working with such a great group of people. I want to thank my colleagues on cabinet for having put up for my nonsense for the last 2 years. I also want to thank especially the staff that I had the privilege and honor of leading in human resources. You will not find a harder working, more dedicated group of staff. And I know Constance McCarn will take that department to a much higher level. I also want to thank our labor leaders, who I also had the opportunity to work with and the privilege and honor to work with. Rich Mullins, Nikki Milewski, Scott Smith from SCTA, Crawford Johnson, Carla Fawcett, Mike Beverly, Ian Arnold from SCIU Local 1021, Alan Dury and Brian Delvin from Teamsters, Greg Thomas, and Dennis Peterson from UPE. Again, it's been my honor, and it's kind of, my kids said, Dad, it's probably a good thing for you to end your career in a building that has kind of our name on it. So it really has been a privilege. I was going to, and I know my time is short, but just let me share this last piece with you. You folks here will make a difference in children's lives. I know from a very personal level what public education has meant. Many of you, Board Member Kennedy, know the story of my family. Parents who came from Mexico with no formal education, spoke no English when they got here, but just wanted a better life for their kids. And for some reason, and I still don't to this day know how they figured out that it was through education we would come out of poverty. My dad never earned more than $1 an hour, never worked under a roof. But somehow they knew that if we got an education, we'd be able to get out of the life of farm workers and of poverty. Mom made it real clear to us. You got two choices. You go to school or you go to work. We chose school. But it also meant, though, summer times meant we would come up to Yuba City in winters and pick peaches, or apricots, Cortland to pick pears. And when we would come up to those places, we'd often stay at a labor camp. And occasionally they wouldn't have a place for us. So we would have to stay in somebody's house. And when they did get a place for us, Mom would make us get up extra early that morning. Rather than 4:30 in the morning, we were up at 3:30. Because she said we would have to go around and clean that house before we left. And she said we always wanted to leave it better than when we got there. And I just hope I made Mom proud by making this place just a little bit better and being here. So again, thank you very much, and I wish you nothing but the best. So thank you.
Very good. Mr. Cerna. Jess. Go ahead. Sorry. I was trying to get your attention.
I just want to comment. First, the story about your mother, it's amazing. I've heard that story before from someone else, and it went exactly like that. I want to say that it's been a pleasure working with you, watching you work as much as anything, watching you take a very difficult job, one of the most difficult jobs in this building, and handle it with such dignity and compassion. Some things that you don't always see in your line of work. And you did it in a way that rose above all the acrimony that we would see at times, and were able to bring people together when it seemed impossible. So I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And again, more importantly, it's been a pleasure to learn from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Member Wu. Not done yet.
Yes, I want to echo what my colleague has said, but you have so many talents. And
Golf not being one of them, okay?
and you have, in fact, represented the district well. Very, very difficult times, very, very difficult negotiations. I, for one, am truly thankful for your efforts, and I hope that you have imparted well the wisdom of your ways to the staff that you're leaving behind. And if you have, then we will be in great stead. So hit them long, hit them straight, find that fairway.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
President Cuneo, the speaker following Mr. Mendoza has given her 2 minutes to him as well.
Sounds good. Can we give Mr. Mendoza 4 minutes?
Good evening. My name is Max Mendoza. Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, board members, I come here to see what our school board can do for our children. But I have to present to you people how some of these schools are looking, and I feel that it's our responsibility to make it better for our children. I have some complaints here, and I want to show you these pictures. Paul. Best we can do with that lighting. Now this picture here goes back, let me say, 20 years ago. I've been keeping my eye on this particular school because it's a very poor neighborhood. I brought this to the attention of Manny Hernandez when he was the president. At that time, I asked him, I said, can we do better? This is a disgrace. 20 years later, they put in a new fence. Okay, that one right there. This is Woodbine. And as you can see, it gets, well, he did cut the weeds because I did complain to code enforcement. But it's so nasty the way they do things in our area. This school belongs to all of us. As you know, here in Sacramento, you see these carts all over, especially in poor neighborhoods. This is where they exist. This is where poor people are at. I feel that, sometimes these people are so poor that we pick on them and blame them for everything. This right here is part of the sidewalk. And as you can see, the weeds have come out to a point that it doesn't look right. It's a fire hazard. And as you can see that fence, surely that's a poor person that lives there. Sometimes they can't afford it. Now this is the other part of Woodbine. As you can see there, this is how it looks all year round. Now, we do have code enforcement here in Sacramento, but sometimes these people don't get out to do their job right. And this is what develops. There's another cart out there, as you can see. This is part of this wall, too, where the grass, the weeds have grown into the sidewalk, so people have to get off the sidewalk and walk on the street. That, to me, is dangerous. We have to look out for these children. I mean, every one of us, even though you guys are the board, but I'm responsible, too, because they're our children. We have to look at it that way. These kids, if we don't take care of them, who is? Now, as you can see here, these weeds here, it's like that all year round. There's a gutter right here, drain gutter, as you can see this, and that gets clogged up. Before you know it, the water undermines the subgrade And as you can see that sidewalk there, I'm going to say it's probably every bit of 5 inches to 3 all the way through. Now that's dangerous. They can trip and fall, hurt themselves also.
We could wrap
I'm
up,
getting
sir.
down to the end of it.
Okay, if we could wrap up, thank you.
And again, the weeds, the same trail the kids have to walk to school and from school. The same thing here. And then look at all these shrubs that overgrown into the sidewalk. These kids can't walk through there. Now, I know that all it is somebody calling somebody. And you people here as the board can call the city of Sacramento. Matter of fact, we have an ally there, which is Jay Chenier. And this is Jay Chenier's area. He's our councilman.
We could wrap up, sir.
And I want to be wrapping up. This is the other part of, well, I'll start with this one right here. As you can see, all the trees here, the limbs, sometimes you have to duck to walk around there. And I don't think that's fair. And here's the other one, how it looks. It's nice and shady, but not on the sidewalk. That's dangerous. And the last one shows how it really looks. And there's a view of it. You can see that even anybody would have a hard time getting through even a person that's disabled. But anyway, I thought I'd bring this to you because sometimes seeing something, it's better than just telling you this is what it is. And like I spoke with you back in February, Mr. Kennedy, and at that time I said that the reason why things happen to us is because you don't care. Now, to me, whoever's responsible here surely fits that picture, don't care. Now, as a school board, I hope that you people will tell let's say our city council,
Sir,
our mayor,
if we could wrap up, please.
that, he's got to do his part too.
Okay. Member Rodriguez? Thank you, sir.
Is that 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't hear the buzzer? It was about 5 or 6
I thought I
minutes.
was given 4 minutes.
Yes, you were, sir.
Was?
Yes.
Sorry, but
It's okay. Member Rodriguez, go ahead.
Thank you, President
I
Cunyo.
want to thank you. And as you can see, 4 minutes ain't enough.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. I just want to let you know that since you've been bringing this to the attention of our board, and also through your phone calls to me, I did get the ball rolling to coordinate some efforts in that area. So talking to a few of our partners, and it looks like we're going to have something on August 31st to clean the immediate area of Woodbine Elementary, the street, just to prepare for the children to come back to school. So Jay Chenier's office, Councilmember Jay Chenier's office, did respond back to my email to them, as well as the neighborhood services who are going to give us free grabbers and gloves and garbage bags. And so I would like for you to join us on that day with whoever you would like to bring so that many hands will make light work. So please put that down on your calendar.
What time?
At 8:30 in the morning.
8:30. Now, is the board going to be there?
I would like to have the entire board be there if it fits to their
I'll be
schedule.
there, and I'll stay until it's done. But I feel that if the board can be there, this way you guys know exactly what's going on. And let's hope that this never happens again. Because if we have Earth Day here in America, I mean, we have to respect that. And public safety is an issue that everybody should be protected, especially our children.
Mr. Mendoza, I thank you very much for your concern. And perhaps maybe we could talk about doing something. That neighborhood does need a lot of attention, and one cleanup day is certainly not going to do what we really need is a sustainable solution in that area. I'd love to continue this conversation, but right now we do have to move on with our board. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank every one of you. And we
Thank you,
can
sir.
do it. And like Cesar Chavez used to say, si se puede. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Member Roy.
Member Rodriguez, can you tell me again the date?
August 31st.
August 31st at 8:30
Okay.
at Woodbine School.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Good morning, board members and President Cunha. My name is Jessica Arriaga, and I did want to take this time out and thank you for the budget forum that we had. I think it was productive. I think, and I know Hanson and board member Rodriguez and board member Pritchett were there. I think it was a good example of how productive engaging the public can be. And I hope and I do anticipate other forums like that. I think it was just an eye-opener. I think that we can work together as a community and as a board, and I think it was a very positive experience, although not all of the questions were answered, but at least we had an engaging conversation about our problems and any possible solutions that as a public may have. So especially with local control funding coming around, I think it just was a good example of how that can be assembled as far as public and parent advocacy. So I just wanted to thank you sincerely and hope and anticipate more meetings like that, because I think they were very positive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, kind of been an exciting night. Hello, all of you. I'm Victoria Camargo, as you know. I'm here tonight to give you a report on the DAC. And this school year, we've been meeting here every second Tuesday in this room at 6 p.m. We've been discussing the school closures, even voted on the schools that they should remain open, and we voted that the 7 schools should be revisited. We've talked about the CDIP, the CONAP, and we felt that we didn't have enough information on the CONAP. We also felt that we didn't have, or that we felt that the bylaws needed a lot more done with them. And we also were pleased with the access to Escape and the budget that we've had lately. And the DAC has voted to request from all of you that we have 2 spots on the agenda each month for information reports and updates that last more than 2 minutes, because we felt that that when we do bring information items up here, we're not having enough time. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Cunha. I was going to mention the DAC during board sharing, but I'll just mention it now since I have been in attendance in the last couple of DAC meetings myself, and I've come out feeling very discouraged. School closures have been a very heated topic in these sessions, and I have high hopes that in September, when school's back in session and the school site councils, the school site councils start to reconvene and they appoint DAC representatives, I think that there'll be a cooling off period. But I do want to request that the board consider appointing a board member to the DAC. And I hope that our president will consider this recommendation and place it on the next agenda.
Thank you. I will consider it. Member Hanson.
Thanks. I'm a little bit out of order. I pressed my button, but I didn't make it, I guess, known for the previous speaker. But I wanted to thank Victoria and the other parents and guests who came to the budget forum that we had. I think it was very well attended, and I also enjoyed having an interactive conversation. I think that's really important, and I anticipate and expect that we'll have more of those. I think it's valuable for all of us. I just wanted to thank you for being there and thank the folks that took time to do that. I think it's really important.
Do we have one more?
Yes, President Cunha, we have one more comment from Leo Bennett Koshan.
Leo Bennett Koshan. My doctor and wife gave me a reprieve, but they are limiting me to 2 agenda items.
Meet your doctor.
There's a statement in the transition packet which states that with the commitment to the families as a priority, district procedures and processes have been reviewed and modified if necessary to aid families affected by the school closure. I am again here to urge you to consider Joseph Bonheim's request for a charter. I applaud that we have transparency, and there's an answer on the board website which states the board committee's executive committee places items on the agenda. The request for the waiver was been considered by the board's executive committee, and the agenda as posted reflects the committee's decision. That was in request 2. Why is there no waiver for Joseph Bonheim on the agenda? We know 3 of you would probably favor it. We know 3 folks on the executive committee have made a decision that we can't even have the conversation. So, Member Hanson, I'm turning to you, obviously, as the pivot person in favor of an interactive conversation and urging you to place it on the agenda, at least to talk about whether it should be on the agenda. As I've stated, and everyone knows, there's no way they could have met the district deadlines for a charter application because they weren't aware they were going to be closed. All those deadlines passed before this initiative even started. Other districts have started these initiatives much earlier, and schools have had this as Plan B when they knew about it in September. We didn't have that luxury. I think that policy needs to be modified, and it would be great if it was there so that we could take a look at that. The executive committee no longer meets in public. When I was here 4 years ago, I could go to the executive committee. They say that it's not due to the Brown Act. Wrapping it up, the Brown Act does say that if it's a standing committee with continuing subject matter or a meeting schedule, it's subject to the open meeting laws. I would like you to post why the executive committee is not open, and the Brown Act is the minimum, and your board policy states board committees shall provide public notice and follow the open meeting laws. I urge you to follow board policy. Thank you. And it was fun watching you 4 years ago.
That was the final comment. Thank you. Item 8.0, the consent agenda. I will move. It looks like we have a comment by Member Pritchett.
I have some questions in regards to the consent agenda. After reviewing it, first off, the new SIS system, is that going to be replacing Zangle?
Yes, correct.
Okay. How can we, is this going to be a better way that our teachers will be able to use it? I know that there's been issues with teachers not using Zangle, and it's a lot of money to spend if they're not going to use it.
The big issue with Zangle is that shortly after the district decided to adopt Zangle in the spring of 2009, the company went out of business, in essence. And so there's no one to call when there's issues and problems, and our staff has really had to do everything they can to simply try to support the program as it is. We can't develop it. We can't create new, easier to use, more user-friendly functions, and with all the issues that Zangle has. And so, this is our attempt to create an opportunity to have a fully interactive web-based system that will be, in the end, much more user-friendly and able to do and have better functionality for all those that are involved.
Okay, that's great. So I guess my real question is, how can we guarantee that our teachers are going to use it? Because right now, not all of them are using Zangle, especially in the higher grades.
So it's about one of training and support, and again, I think that the training that was given was initially perhaps inadequate, and we have to do a much better job, and certainly we need a better partner. And as I said, shortly after Zangle was adopted, that company started having problems.
That's great. That's my feelings on Zangle. So, my second question was the new Apple Air contract that was in the consent agenda. It's quite a bit of money. And so first off, I want to know what the lifespan is expected on them. And is this bond money being used for this?
So I can answer the latter question. Yes, it is bond money. This is in part to get us so that we are Smarter Balance assessment compliant. So we'll be able to take those assessments, which in part will be online. but also more importantly, it begins to bring our schools and our classrooms up to the 21st century, so that our children and our teachers can start using computers to do much more online and interactive learning. I can have our technology staff provide the answer. Ken, do you want to provide that on the lifespan?
Yes, sir. We would anticipate at the minimum 5 years of usable life. Obviously, technology expires rapidly. In reality, we would expect that these devices will be in use for 10 years.
Okay.
And I should say that the last 2 years we've had 3 schools. The Met, Cal Middle, and Rosa Parks have been our proof of concept schools in terms of utilizing our Apple technology and Apple professional development and support and training, and it's been very, very successful. And so we're building off of that work.
Okay. My last question on the consent agenda, on under the building and developer section of under the financial reports, can you tell me what's being paid? What is actually considered builder and developer funds?
So do you have a reference for me, and I can get Kathy Allen to perhaps come up here and assist with that?
It was on page 67, I know that.
Do you have an item number?
No, I did not write that down. Maybe we can come back to that. You and I can meet.
Building and developer, it's under.
Yeah.
You want to pass that right now? Is that what you wanted to? Yeah. Was Ms. Allen going to come answer, or do you want to move on? She needs to find it. Okay, why don't we give her a moment, and Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cunyo. I just had a question about during our presentation for the measure Q&R funds, it was stated that we would be able to use some of our bond money for this type of purchase. It seems like it's close to the amount of what we're at our maximum for that particular type of purchase. So is there any future plans on doing more technology buys, and what's on the horizon for us? What should we be expecting?
Right. So we have significant plans for technology in terms of this is a purchase of technology equipment, right? So these are laptop carts and laptops for all of our schools, again, so we can be ready to administer the Smarter Balance assessments. But beyond that, we have continuing upgrading of our networks, of our wiring, of our connectivity at all of our school sites. In fact, we'll be bringing in early September, mid-September, our plan for utilization of the bond funds, as well as the plans for technology.
It would make me feel a lot more comfortable if we had the plan before we had the expense. Because then I could see we're going down according to plan, or we're not going down, but we're going down the line of expenditures according to plan. Without a plan, I don't know if this is part of it, and if it's, if we're hitting our allowable percentage for this type of purchase. Because I understand that the available lifespan should be more than 5 years when we purchase technology. Otherwise, then it's not worth it for short-term or long-term financing. The other question that I have outside of that is why Apple products? It just came to my attention today that there are some employers that unfortunately are having to let staff go because they don't know how to work on regular PCs, because there is a marked difference between the Apple world and a PC world, and they're unable to function in the work environment. So I just was out of curiosity. I know this is for a specific reason, but it seems like this district is really going heavy into Apple, and we need to look at the technology of where we're at in the workforce, with only Apple products taking 7% of the market share and regular PCs taking all the rest with a small margin. Yes, Mr. Forrest.
This is just the first buy, and as the superintendent indicated, this was to make sure we're SBAC compliant and SBAC ready. In addition to these devices, which will bring the ratio up to one device for each of our 4 students, the next phase will not only look at Windows-based devices, but also Chrome-based devices. So the 3 primary technologies out there today, actually 4, are the Apple operating system, the Windows operating system, and the Chrome operating system, coupled with strictly web-based applications in the cloud. And so it is our intent to put together a plan where we look at all of those technologies so our students are truly ready when they go out into the workforce. So on the Apples used in the secondary schools, we have both Windows-based devices, which we're looking at an upgrade plan so that they'll be running at least Windows 7 in the future. So they'll have the latest and greatest Windows, and we're trying to develop a plan which allows us to look at migrating technology through the levels and from the district level, and not depending upon individual sites to acquire that technology. So that's in the discussion phase now, and we think that as we develop that plan, you'll see a definite emphasis on ensuring that our students are exposed to all 4 of the technologies so they are ready to hit the workforce when they leave the district.
Thank you. And just for clarification, I did bring up the graph here. It says Windows is 91.56% of the market share. Mac is 7.19%. Linux is 1.25%. And then other is, very small and insignificant, didn't show up.
But I might add that that other small and insignificant is Chrome. And I think 5 years from now, that graph will look radically different because Google's driving the train. And as we know, Google is a somewhat powerful force. And so as we look at how things move to the cloud and where things are headed, I think you'll see that people are going to abandon the traditional Office apps. That's why Microsoft is so worried. But that's part of it. But we certainly are not abandoning the Windows devices. I think the emphasis will be there when it needs to be. Obviously, I'm running a Windows device.
Thank you. And then my last question is, which schools are these going to go to? I know that's one for every 4 students, but
They'll be going to all of our schools.
thank you.
Member Kovalchuk.
My question was about the transition from Zangul. With Zangul out of business or bankrupt, or we don't know, is there a guarantee that the student information, the confidential stuff that used to be on the forms in the office under lock and key and all that, is there any guarantee that it'll be erased or won't be accessible through the web? Because through Zangul, it basically has every single piece of our information right out there.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, that's part of the implementation plan, is exactly how do we historically take care of the Zangul data, because we will need access to some of that data. So part of the plan is how much of that is moved to the new system. And we had a meeting today, for example, with the district external auditors, informed them of the transition which will be taking place. They reminded us that they have an obligation to have their special information technology audit team will have to review this implementation to ensure that all of the requirements for data security and privacy are met.
Thank you.
Ms. Allen, did you want to respond to Member Pritchett's question?
If I might add, we have not finalized the vendor for our system, but both finalists meet all of the requirements for data security and everything else. So we still are probably about 2 weeks away from making that selection. We have some more WebExes that will be going on so that more employees in our labor groups can take a look at the new system and ask some of the same questions you're asking.
Good evening. So essentially, I think the question is the deposits and the expenditures out of Fund 21, Fund 25. So Fund 21 is our building fund, where all the bond funds would be deposited, and if they're state money, we would also be utilizing that fund. Fund 25 would be incoming and outgoing developer fee expenditures. So the $678 would have been somebody coming in to pay a developer fee for, since it's that small of an amount, it probably was a commercial or an industrial project. And then we had some expenditures out of both of those funds. You know, obviously we're starting to pay some pretty big bills for the work that's being done this summer. So the one that I'm not too sure on is the deposit for $10,000 in Fund 21. So it was either a transfer possibly or something related to a bond sale.
Thank you. Seeing no other comment or questions, I will move the consent agenda. Second by Vice President Wu. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda is passed. 9.0 Board Workshop, Strategic Plan, and other initiatives. 9.1 School Closure Transition Update. It's an information item. 30-minute presentation, 15-minute discussion. Ms. Kuwa-Franz, Ms. Sue Holsey.
Okay, good evening, President Cuneo, members of the board, and Superintendent Jonathan Raymond. My name is Kuwa-Franz. I'm the Chief of Staff, and I'm here today with a portion of our district team to present on item 9.1 tonight. We're back tonight to give you an update on our school closure transition. Again, I want to start by reiterating our commitment to our community during this process. We are committed to making sure that students and families are taken care of during the transition. We will work with our partners to provide families all the support they require during the process. We will be addressing the individual needs of each student and family, and we will continuously communicate regarding where we are with the process throughout the entire process with our families. Again, really quickly around our structure during this transition, we worked both at a site level. We created site level transition teams. We have our district level transition teams working together around the move and identifying the enrollment of all our children. We have also our community stakeholder team working with us to reflect and to provide feedback as we move through this process. I'm pleased to report that we have met all of our short-term goals, which include identifying student placement, engaging our community during this process, and developing the timeline necessary for each of the activities and events that were to occur during this process. We've also met our midterm goals in continually engaging our stakeholders, providing staff with clear responsibilities and key tasks and moving this process forward, and also by identifying the materials and equipments and supports necessary for the move. We are coming along very well with our long-term goals in facilitating the transfer of students in the most respectful and sensitive manner, and to ensure that our classroom sites are ready for a first day of school. Today, we're going to come back with an update on our enrollment information to give you all an update on where we are. We're going to also update you on our after-school programs. You're going to hear about our final transportation and safety plans. We're going to focus on special ed and child development tonight, so we'll give you all an update on those plans and the moves. And then we're going to update you all on the overall moves as far as equipment, furniture, materials, and facility upgrades. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Sue Holsey, our lead transition administrator.
Thank you. Good evening, President Cuneo, board members, Superintendent Raymond. I'd like to take this opportunity to update you on the projected enrollments in the district. As previously reported, all student placements have been confirmed and solidified, and we're using those numbers for our planning purposes and have all summer long. The Enrollment Center and the area assistant superintendents have been reviewing the district enrollments almost daily, and they've changed very little at this point in time. Next week, however, the interdistrict permit applications will be reviewed and placements will begin to take place. And these placements will be based upon identified space at specific schools and in specific grade levels. This is highly individualized work, and it's handwork because the openings often need to be available in multiple grade levels at a specific school to accommodate siblings and families. While the district cannot guarantee at the time of application a space in a particular school or particular request, past history has dictated that most families are accommodated through this process. I'd like to add that the interdistrict permit process is an ongoing process that throughout the school year as requests come in and spaces become available for families. We haven't lost sight of the fact that the board has an interest in seeing what the actual enrollment picture is. Once school begins and enrollments are stabilized, we will be able to, and that's generally by the second or third week of school, staff will be able to paint a much clearer and more accurate picture of the movement and the ins and outs that have occurred over the summer. And so hopefully you will look forward to having that presentation sometime in September. I would now like to pass the baton here to Chuck Ernst, who is our Director of Transportation, and he will update you on the most recent activity in that department. Chuck?
Good evening, President Cuneo, Superintendent, board members. I want to bring you up to date on transportation. As I reported out before, the week of June 13th, information included routes and maps and several other things regarding school closures where I met with school personnel, including some of the principals, to give them that information. One of the things that we've been waiting for is the website to go live, which it has, effective August 1st. Thanks to suggestions from the board, a link to Sacramento Regional Transit was added for families choosing to use the regional transit system. The website includes routes and maps by school site. We included the transportation safety plan, frequently asked questions, ridership registration, formerly called ridership application, and the transportation hotline in several different languages. Another change that we will also make, thanks to the superintendent, is we retitled it. We retitled the ridership application to ridership registration, and we're going to go through the process of getting that finished. Courtesy letters. Again, thanks to the board's suggestions, we developed and sent out courtesy letters to the projected addresses located at the new bus stops, explaining what to expect and who to contact if they encounter any problems. The Connect Ed messaging that I had discussed before with the assistance of communications and Jerry Ewell, we were able to identify students by route and develop a Connect Ed that will be broadcast next week to the families identified as eligible riders. The Connect Ed script was developed, and each principal has a copy of that script. It'll also be in Spanish and Hmong when we send it out. We'll be coordinating with youth development to assist with signage and personnel at stops in the first week of, and personnel at stops, the first week of school. Stacy Bell and her staff will assist the first week of school. She'll be able to talk about that a little bit more as we go on. She'll be able to elaborate on that. A letter to the families was also developed. Letters are going to be distributed to the students the first week of school. Basically what they're going to be asking for is anybody who would like to volunteer their addresses as a alternative bus stop, which would be great because we're going to be capping our bus stops at about 15 students per stop. So if we get more, we'd like to have a choice, a rather quick choice to be able to separate those students so we don't have such large stops. Monitor and adjust routes based upon ridership and new location requests. That'll be probably first month of school. During the first month, new routes will be monitored, and the routes for any signs of overcrowding, and any stops that are not being utilized, we would make the adjustments during that time. On August 14th, met with the receiving principals to discuss transportation in each of the sites receiving bus service. Was given a packet of information that included the ConnectEd script, updated maps and routes, student list for ridership eligibility, letters sent to bus stop addresses, and letters to be sent to the families, so we will all be on the same page. I mentioned about bus stops being at 15 students, and like I say, those adjustments will be made hopefully during September-October time period. We hired 9 new drivers to fill the additional routes. We also needed to backfill 11 positions due to vacancies, retirement, terminations, et cetera, like that. So we've had to hired 20 new people on here. We brought people up from the substitute list, so that's kind of depleted our substitute base, which might be a little problematic at the beginning, but we have a training class in session. We're also advertising for substitute bus drivers. Drivers will have the initial student list to work from. These lists will be utilized to know exactly who is riding the bus. The list will also be used to determine any additional stops that will be necessary. Tracy Lopez and I have made ourselves available to site principals regarding any issues with bus loading and unloading areas. So far, we are working with the principals at Harkness and Oak Ridge and Ethel Phillips, along with Jeff Bozeman and project managers, and also Kathy Allen, and regarding safe loading and unloading for their sites. We're going to closely monitor and reevaluate the routes and ridership once school starts. The numbers of students are less than planned, which may reduce routes necessary to accommodate the receiving schools, but a determination of route changes will be made after school starts. We're projecting 127 routes. We have 127 drivers to fill those positions. Our special ed, we have 104 special ed routes servicing 39 elementary schools, 4 K-8 schools, 10 middle schools, 7 high schools, 3 charter schools, 12 SCOE programs, 6 non-public sites, and 3 transition programs. And on the regular ed side of the house, we have 17 sites that will be servicing transportation for closure, safety, PI, and CONCAP. We have 1 trip driver and 3 unassigned drivers. So we've got a full house and a full program to take care of this year. Driver orientation is on the 30th of this month, where all the drivers come together. Bid is next Monday. Drivers will be bidding on these routes. And then after that, supervisors and I will meet with the drivers of the new routes to go over new processes, especially the routes of closing schools. Our next steps will be to secure the remaining kindergarten schedules needed for transportation for the following school sites. And then to talk about safety plans and things like that will be Tracy Lopez.
Good evening, President Cuneo, Superintendent Raymond, and members of the board. A couple of things that I would like to talk to you about tonight are the walking attendants that we will be assigning to Ethel I. Baker, Pacific Elementary, and Earl Warren. Those positions closed on August the 8th, last week. Candidates are going to be forwarded to the school sites for interviews and selection by the principals. All of our sites have received their walking routes. We've done a little bit of retooling on those. Some of the routes have benefited from walk audits through Walk Sacramento. They've been working with us very closely this summer. The schools that got the walk audits are schools that we are not providing the transportation to. And they've been out there, they've walked them. We've been consulting with the city and the county, and we will continue to assess and reassess those routes for any changes in conditions or anything that might arise.
Hello, good evening, President Cuneo, Superintendent Raymond, members of the board. I wanted to give you an update on after school, but before I do that, I'll touch briefly on what Chuck mentioned in terms of our transportation support. We heard from our Community Partners Transition Committee that they wanted those new bus riders to have additional support on the first day of school, so we will be staffing those 41 bus stops with either community partners and or youth development volunteers that can just be an extra support for parents. They'll have frequently asked questions that they can go through with parents, as well as kind of explain a little bit to them about the ridership process if they need additional help and support. Really, we just want a friendly face for those new bus riders in the morning. So we're excited to be able to do that. We're planning on staffing that first day. Depending on how that goes, we can pull together a team for subsequent days if necessary. But we feel like that first day is the most important time to have supports on that at those 41 stops. The board had asked for additional information about the transportation rationale for after school and why we had decided not to provide transportation during the after school space. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more detail about that. First of all, programmatic concerns or programmatic implications. As you know, after school programs have to run till at least 6 o'clock. Most of our sites run till 6. We do have one site that runs until 6:15. This is part of our grant requirement, and we have to run program at, until that time. If we were to provide transportation, it would have to be leaving the school site at after 6 to 6:15. We also don't have additional programming staff just to provide that support on the bus, so it would have to be school bus drivers responsible for then seeing kids to their bus stops and having parents sign out their students. Part of after-school funding requires that all elementary school parents sign their children out of after-school programming, so that would be, parents would have to be at that bus stop in order to sign their students out, possibly as late as 7 p.m. Parents can elect that students 4th to 6th grade can walk home from school, but that provision is not there for bus stop parents at this point. So we would have to have all parents at bus stops signing their students out, which of course means that some students wouldn't then be dropped off until 7:30, possibly even later, considering the time it would take to sign those students out at the bus stops at night. The transportation office's current policy requires that parents of kindergarten students only be at bus stops when students are let off, which doesn't line with our after-school policy. So we would have to do some work around what would that look like at each bus stop, and what would the responsibilities be for the bus drivers at that point during the evening time. Of course, along with that are the safety concerns. As you know, when fall hours start, it's going to be dark at 7:30. We also traditionally, and facilities can co-sign, have late pickups for parents. And huge concern about what would happen in terms of if parents aren't there picking up their students at that bus stop. What happens during the school day is that if a kindergarten parent isn't there, the bus driver is instructed to bring the student back then to the school site. That wouldn't work during the after-school space. And we do traditionally have parents that arrive as late as 6:30, sometimes even later, picking their students up, even though program ends at 6. The third piece, and probably not the most important piece, is the fiscal implications. Our after-school staff are available again until 6:30. And most transportation office and staff end at 5:30, so we would need to do additional staffing, not only for the bus drivers, but also the supervisors and managers that would be available to address any concerns with those students as they were getting dropped off. Our recommendations are that we spend this next semester doing a real in-depth assessment through our after-school. We can do after-school surveys, we can do focus groups with after-school parents, and really do a data assessment on how many families did not participate in after-school programs because of the transportation issue, because right now we have anecdotal data only. So doing a more in-depth assessment and then determining what can we do to develop programs in neighborhoods if there is a need if the need is evident through our data collection. We do funding and grant requests throughout the year for after school, and different funding cycles come around where more funding is available. So if we can show, for example, in a Washington area or a CP Huntington area that there is a huge need for additional programming in communities, we can apply for additional funds and increase. Our recommendation would be to increase programming during the after-school space in those neighborhoods rather than try to navigate through the transportation issue. Now for the good news. Wanted to give you a funding update. We have been able to transfer a little over $500,000 through the California Department of Education school site substitution forms. We're waiting for formal award letters from them, but that has taken off almost all of our students from the waiting list. We have had to use a small portion of district funds, including collaboration with child development, to meet the additional gaps between what we were able to transfer and the need that was identified through our lottery. We also have increased our partnerships or deepened our partnerships with several partners, including City Year, who was already serving in our after-school space. So we've been able to use them more intentionally to increase the number of slots available for our students. All of our lottery students, I think I mentioned last time, will be served during, all of the students that went through the lottery will be served in after school, which is really exciting. And we have communicated to most of our parents. Partners are following up with their second round of phone calls just to make sure that all parents are aware, but letters have gone out so families know that if they participated in the lottery, they are going to get served during after school. For all families who did not participate in the lottery, who may be new to the school site, applications will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. And we do still have space at certain school sites that weren't as impacted for those new additional families who may come in. We will be collecting waiting lists for families, and that goes across the board for all of our after-school programs. As new families come in, we develop waiting lists, and then if families move out, then we're able to add additional students. So we'll continue that procedure throughout the district. Our next steps, I think that this process has allowed us to uncover some practices during the after-school space, including grandfathering in of students and other things that we're going to take a look at this year to make sure that the after-school time is truly equitable for all students, and using formats similar to lotteries at all of our sites will be our plan in the future, so that we're sure that we have equal access for all of our students in after school. And I just want to close up with thanking, of course, our Community Partners Transition Committee. Some of them are here, but they truly helped us sort of revamp and redesign our process throughout the summer, and we appreciate their input in that. Also want to thank our long-term youth engagement coordinator, Zanae Scott, who this will be her last board meeting. She's probably upstairs working right now, and she's going to be resigning at the end of this month. And so a lot of the work that we've done in after school and in summer has been really pivotal. She's been really pivotal in a lot of that. So we're really going to miss her and look forward to continuing collaborating with her in the future. And this will be Becky Bryant with Special Ed.
Good evening. Our department was committed to working closely and collaboratively with all the other departments in preparation for the move of our programs and our students. We hosted a specific question and answer session for our families of special needs students in February so that we could answer questions specific to the special education process that they needed additional assistance with. Our students that received speech and language and or were in the RSP program had the option to participate in the open enrollment, just like the students that were in general education full-time. Our students that did not participate in the open enrollment process were then assigned to the new schools of residence, as they were assigned to all the general ed students. We were also committed to moving our SDC personnel and classrooms intact to their new sites. We worked very closely with the facilities department to determine available classrooms on the receiving sites and surrounding sites in the area for our more regionalized program that don't have an attendance-specific boundary. Our SDC teachers were notified of their new program locations in April. Our families were notified at the same time in April. We are now currently assisting the school sites and the HR department to fill our teacher vacancies that exist within the district. Some of them are at receiving sites, and we have had to increase some of our services at a few of those receiving sites due to the increased enrollment. I would like to introduce Dr. Wanda Roundtree, our Interim Director of Child Development.
Thank you, Becky. Good evening, President Cunha, Superintendent Raymond, and board members. Of course, child development has been an integral part of the transition process thus far. And in terms of our general recruitment efforts, they have gone unchanged. Returning families have all completed the re-enrollment process, and that process began this past May. In terms of the projection analysis and determining the numbers of our students, that process has also been completed. In terms of modifications, modifications for designated sites, designated classrooms are in process. Also, unlike the K-12 system, the preschool registration and recruitment processes are ongoing for child development. So that is an important point that I wish to share this evening. You have before you a matrix there, and it is pretty clear-cut. The majority of the children served in child development, I just want to remind you, are 4-year-olds. A significantly smaller number of children are 3-year-olds. And as you can glean from the matrix there, most of the children are returning. As you can see, please bear in mind that children of growing families, those families that have preschoolers, are pretty transient in our particular communities. And of course, preschool is not mandatory. And while preschool is beneficial, it certainly, there again, it is not mandatory. And we have had, in terms of the working closely with our school-age population, we have had 100% success connecting with these families to ensure that they are connected to a viable school-age program, and we've been very happy to work very closely with the Youth Services Division to ensure particularly the families at Washington that they are served in an after-school program adjacent to their homes. Regarding this slide, I just want to quickly mention that all the moves have been completed as of today, and so we're very happy to report that. And of course, we continue to work very, very closely with all of the SCUSD departments to facilitate this very important transition for our children and their families. Again, this slide simply indicates the very critical tasks, somewhat of a timeline, tasks that have been completed with regard to the transition process, and you can read for yourselves there. Child Development did implement a very special, or we are going to be implementing, I should say, a very special transition activity, and that will take place next week on the 19th and 20th respectively, and it's going to take place at our registration sites. It's a wonderful opportunity for our preschoolers to meet their peers and to meet their teachers and other support staff within the child development program. Children will all receive a book, and there'll be some other interesting activities for youngsters. And this is really over and beyond what we typically do in child development. We do have a very organized process in terms of phasing children in. We call it Slow Start. And it's a process whereby 5 children at a time come in, and when they stay for about an hour and 15 minutes or so, then another group comes in. The parents are allowed to stay there. Questions are answered. Parents are also engaged in conversations with teachers, and specific questions are answered. So this is over and beyond the preschool meet and greet, which will take place on the 19th and 20th. And we also needed to do it pretty much in close proximity to the start of school, because our children are very young, and so we're talking about many of them just having made 4 years of age. Oh. And as you can see from this final chart, from this slide, rather, that again, child development is not boundary driven. We will continue to collaborate and work very closely with principals at the designated school sites, efforts around school home communication and so forth. And we will continue to support our teachers, particularly our children and our families. And with regard to this transition process, adjustment is a big thing in child development, and so we're right on it. And we have had very successful experiences in terms of adjusting and monitoring and supporting our children and our families. At this particular point in time, I would like to introduce Kathy Allen, Assistant Superintendent of CAMS. She'll take the podium at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening again. So as we've shared with you on several occasions, site visits were made to both receiving and the closing school sites to determine the scope of work and to inventory all the spaces that were available or could be repurposed. Really, the purpose of this kind of provided an opportunity for the central office staff to work with site staff on the placing of programs on individual campuses. So we provided handouts to principals and teachers and clerical staff that provided guidance on organizing and inventorying and labeling and packing for classroom materials, furniture and equipment, office supplies, and other ancillary items. We also compensated teachers who worked the Monday after school was out, who were there packing up their classrooms, and we paid them their per diem rate for the day. Obviously, there's been an awful lot of coordination, as you've heard tonight, and ongoing by all the folks that are indicated on the slide here and other SUSD departments, really to help make this very successful. I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks and those of numerous individuals to Tommy Greer and his crew for their phenomenal support over the summer. They have done such a terrific job in moving all of the materials and the furniture and the textbooks and the technology down to the last pen and pencil. Site principals and staff have really gone out of their way to express their thanks and appreciation for all their hard work. Moves will be completed with very minor exceptions by August 17th. So considerable time has also been spent working with the site administrators to help with repurposing or reallocating spaces on sites to accommodate program needs. For example, this may have meant that an RSP teacher who was maybe previously utilizing a full-size classroom was relocated into a smaller space that would accommodate the number of students that person served, and then that classroom is now being utilized as let's say, a fourth grade classroom. Also, maybe classrooms once used as storage have been turned back into classrooms, and storage is now being shared. Multi-purpose rooms and stages were used over the summer to temporarily store a lot of furniture and equipment while deep cleaning was going on. And by deep cleaning, I mean a very thorough cleaning from top to bottom of all classroom spaces. And I'd like to acknowledge Kent Jones at this time and his crew that have worked extremely hard over the summer getting the schools ready for the students and staff. So with relatively minor exceptions, all classrooms have been put back together, so to speak. Teachers have started to arrive and prepare their rooms for the new year. There are two sites in particular, Ethel Phillips and Rosa Parks, where we are splitting classroom spaces. So at Ethel Phillips, we're splitting 2 3-classroom portable spaces into 2 classrooms, and then at Rosa Parks, we're doing 1 large classroom into 2 classrooms. So in both those cases, we've had to tear down walls and move plumbing, and now we're rebuilding walls. So we're not quite finished with those spaces yet, but they will be done by next week. Obviously, we're working very hard to complete them in order to allow the teachers as much time as possible to prepare their classrooms. So it really has been quite an accomplishment by so many people over the summer to complete the work. Beyond the work at the receiving school sites, we have our Quick Strike projects, we have our Project Green activities that continue, we have other bond projects going on, and then our regular maintenance activities to the point where we've literally touched every site in the district. In late September, we're going to be sharing with you a recap of all the work that we've been doing over the summer. We'll have some before and after pictures that hopefully we'll enjoy of the work that was accomplished over the summer. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sue.
I I wanted to share with you some of the activities that are ongoing. That parent-teacher home visits have begun for those schools who are in that program. Later on in the month, just before school starts, the social emotional learning professional development will begin, and that training and that practice will continue throughout the school year. Obviously, September 3rd is the day we're greatly anticipating. We have the Sacramento Goes Back to School program. Plans are in place certainly for that, and we have committed at least one additional person at each of the receiving sites to help them handle that first day back at school, so that they have an additional person to direct, to answer phones, help parents, whatever the need may be at any particular site. On September 5th, there will be the board update on the opening of school. And September 19th, Lisa Levasseur and Carrie Rose will be back to hopefully update you on what is the implementation actually of the parent-teacher home visits and the SEL program that is ongoing in the receiving sites. And finally, September through June, there will be obviously focus on the transition for those receiving sites to make sure that parents' needs, families' needs are taken care of throughout the school year. And with that, we'll open up to any questions or comments that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have public comment, Ms. Ross?
We have 4 public comments on 9.0. Victoria Camargo, Leo Bennett-Cochon, Edward Camargo, who I believe will be giving his time to Mr. Bennett-Cochon, and Jessica Arriaga.
Victoria Camargo. I know they've all done an outstanding job because I've sat on the transition committee since it's almost beginning. But my problem is you guys have dropped the ball. Since the beginning, since the closure, you closed the schools. You told us that we would have priority if we went and we did the open enrollment, but then you took the schools off the open enrollment that we had in our area, which were the receiving schools. So then we had to fill out the permit. It's 2 weeks till school starts. My son doesn't have a school yet. And now we're being told that it could be a month or two into school until he finds out. So what's going on? When's he going to have a school? But yet no answers. Where's our priority? You closed our schools. My son doesn't have a school. Where's my answer? And I also asked 2 meetings ago about the Zangle. My son's not on Zangle anymore. None of his information, not his name, none of us from the closing schools, none of our kids are on Zangle. My daughters are on Zangle, but not my son. So have you lost our kids from the closing schools? I'd like an answer to that too.
I have 4 minutes. Let's say 4. Or...
Is that true?
It's a bargain. I'm leaving after this.
Yeah, technically, is this breaking your doctor and your wife?
They gave me an exemption, but the limit is I can only talk at the time starting, so on 2 topics.
Okay.
So, going ahead. I would like to ask what the enrollment is right now and ask that that be posted on the website. I think it's critical that we know how much ADA loss is happening. I would like to ask that we have a breakout on the price of the $149,000 that's been spent, and that breakout be expanded to include the cost of the teachers, the reimbursement for them, the cost of bus upgrades, even if it's coming out of bond money, Any portables that are being moved, if it's coming out of bond money, we still need to know that was money that was spent and the cost of renovations and modifications. CB Wire is one of my main schools as to why in the world is it being closed. There are currently 25 schools with less enrollment than CB Wire. CB Wire peaked a long time ago at 626 kids. It's declined 161, and it's being penalized because it still has portables on site. You said you would close James Marshall, and then skip AM Wynn, which lost 183 kids in the same time frame. But then you didn't close James Marshall, but you kept them both open, and they have 100 less kids than CB Wire. I predict when you're all done next year, when I come back in September or October with the facts, after the fact, but they'll still be the facts, that you'll have 19 schools still open that are smaller than CB Wire. CB Wire has 14 general ed classrooms. It right now is projected in the book packet that you gave us today to go to 4 regular ed schools at Ethel Baker and 6 at Pacific. That's 10. You project normally a 7% ADA loss. You seem to be on projection as you get rid of CB Wire. As you impact Ethel Baker has 2 vacant rooms right now, but you're putting 4 there, so I'd like to know on the website, what are you giving up? The after-school program, the computer lab, what is being impacted at Ethel Baker, which is also being wrong-sized. Pacific also has no vacant rooms, and you're putting 6 rooms into it. Again, wrong-sized. CP Huntington, 6 general ed classrooms being moved to Hollywood Park, 3 rooms, 2 vacant. Harkness, 2 rooms, 2 vacant. Hey, we right-sized for a change. But that's 5. And Huntington had 6 general ed classrooms altogether. So we've lost students again as we wrong size. Fruit Ridge is being moved. We're losing AM programs. Where are they going? And is it being moved with its 10 general ed classroom to Oak Ridge and Father Keith Kennedy, 4 and 3 specifically? That's 7. So there's 3 rooms being lost there. Oak Ridge has 0 vacant buildings currently. So are we going to lose the after-school program, the support program room, the staff lounge maybe? I mean, teachers love to give things up, but we have to have this data. What's being lost as we wrong size Oak Ridge? You have a priority school, Father Keith Kennedy. You're moving kids in there. Research shows that change always lowers scores. And if you were serious, you'd bus these kids to an 800 APAI school. And that's how you would actually not wrong sizing, but right sizing. Joseph Bonheim, I've spoken to you about it. What's going to happen to its AM programs, its youth and family resource program, all the different things that are being lost as you continuously wrong size this district. But hey, we can get it. We know how you can fix everything. It's all very flexible. Just squish it together, and we have right-sized our district. I'm sorry. I feel that this is a betrayal. I'm very, very grateful, I'm wrapping it up, that you're not arresting me for not sticking to the legitimate size. I thank Gustavo for showing us that we can have a bigger size to communicate. I think it's very 1, 2, 3, 4. The core of the board sitting right there. Jay, find the truth in your heart. Join the other 3 on the sides so that we can get back to being for children. Thank you. The doctor might be mad at me for getting carried away.
You got worked up a little bit.
In case you were going to arrest me, I did prepare a shirt, so now I don't need it anymore, so that if you took my sign away, I could wear betrayed.
We're not going to arrest you, don't worry.
I know, but I just, my wife worked on it.
What would we do if you weren't here?
Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good evening. My name is Jessica Arriaga, and I wanted to point out that one of your bullet points was we will communicate constantly and regularly with families throughout the process. And as a member, as a parent who has lost their school, the only communication I've received is from here. There hasn't been any letters. We don't have anything that. Everything I've received is from coming to meetings here, which is disconcerting to the parents that aren't here and how they're being communicated with. I find that problematic. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as board members. I hope we're not relying heavily on the website, because I think it's been pointed out that a majority of our families don't have access to internet, especially with the closing sites. So please bear that in mind. The other thing I wanted to point out is when you were going over the special ed piece, my son in particular isn't special ed, but he has a 504, so he has special needs. And so, of course, I'm advocating for him, and I'm going to be reaching out to his parents, to his teachers, to his principals, just so that we can meet outside of the beginning of the first day of school to help him transition and get acquainted with the site before the other students come in, because he has a really hard time adjusting to new environments. But that's because I'm initiating that. I don't know how many other kids don't meet special ed, but are in the general population of students that aren't getting that necessary attention. How have we identified what their needs are? I'm just concerned because I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm doing all the outreach, but I don't feel like it was my job to reach out and make things happen. I've gotten no support or initiated support from the district staff. So I find that problematic for parents who may not be reaching out to those resources. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because I think they've painted one picture, and I really want to paint the real picture. I think as parents, we're not prepared. And if we're not prepared, then the school district isn't prepared for the first day of school.
Just so other board members know, Assistant Mary Harden Young is talking to Ms. Camargo right now about the issues that she brought forth in her public comment. Do we have any questions or comments from any member of the board? We have Board Member Hanson.
Yeah, I've got a few things I'd like to ask. One, a question I had asked earlier, and I knew at some point in time we'd be able to get to this point, but I understand there's normal moving of the students in and out of the district when students' families move in and out. Some folks are come and gone, but I'd like to know, of the students that were in the closed schools, how many students have re-registered in other Sac City Unified School District schools, so we know how many students we've retained. I guess we can look and see what the average number of losses is from one year to another to kind of guess how many of those might just have been gone from normal attrition, so we can arrive at a number to see if we really did we lose students during the transition. I suspect that probably some number, and I think it would be valuable for all of us to know in case we're in a situation where other schools have to be closed at some point in the future, and it's obviously information that's valuable for other districts that have to face the tough choices that we had to make. I just think that'd be valuable information. I'd like to know, can you tell me now how many students we had in our closed schools and how many of those students have re-registered in other spots within our district?
Within our district. So do we have that data as far as... Yeah. So what we can do is provide that information at a later time, because what we do have is we know that all of our students that has been identified from their closed schools to their receiving schools, we have a number of anticipated enrollment. We're waiting for that first day of school to determine which students actually show. So that's kind of where we can determine whether or not there's any loss in enrollment or attrition over time. So our right now, we do have the numbers as far as which students are going to which receiving school, where they are registered. That information we can definitely have. But as far as on the first day of school, who shows up, we'll have to wait until that first week of school to determine whether or not we've lost that attendance.
Sure.
So I can definitely provide that information. As far as are they at another school, we should be able to determine that.
Correct. If they're enrolled, I understand.
Yeah.
School has not started yet, so you can't tell me
I
whether they
can't
will or
exactly.
will not be actually
we
there.
can
So
we can produce reports that shows where they're currently enrolled
Great.
and register.
That'd be valuable. So I appreciate that. And then I understand they're doing home visit programs for schools. Is every school doing a home visit program that's a receiving school?
So all receiving school sites are doing home visits, correct? This time around, we're actually doing transitional home visits for all our receiving schools. So in addition to sites that were previously doing home visits, the receiving schools are actually receiving additional support just so they're reaching out to those incoming families.
Because I understand that William Land Elementary School has not done any home visits, and I've asked the staff there to let me know when they did do home visits with the Washington students, and I've been told so far that they've done none. So I'm quite concerned about that, and I'd like to be kept apprised when they do start home visits. I would like to be notified just so I can participate in some of that.
Sure.
So maybe just want to make sure I have my facts straight. So I'd appreciate it if you can get me back, get back to me on that one.
I can.
And then I understand. I saw the students. 8 students were waitlisted at Washington, and I understand we have about I saw on the slide about 19% of the students district-wide have been waitlisted. What's the normal process for that? And with the child development programs, I saw there were some students that were waitlisted.
Would you be able to address that?
Well, of course, our students, our preschoolers that are enrolled in our program, there is of course, specific criteria for eligibility as well. And so as as we sort of go down the list, it depends on who's registered first and that sort of thing, then we certainly can enroll those particular families. There is a very specific process that we do have in terms of registering our families in child development.
But were the students that were at a school that was closed, they did not get preference at another school?
Those children, they all got preference.
Because I saw on one of the slides, it said for Washington Elementary that there are 8 students that were on the wait list. Were those 8 students who were in Washington this previous year who haven't found a place to go yet? Or
I'm looking at that. I think, are we referring to then the school age? Yes, that's the school age population. Because we had school age, of course, at Washington, those families need to be transferred to William Land, and that is part of the arrangement that we've made thus far with youth services. We will be providing a small amount of money so that they can expand, youth services can expand their after-school program to service our school agers. And so from that point on, they will no longer be a part of child development. Of course, they will now belong to Youth Services Division. Those were the children that we had at the Washington, part of the CDE, at the Washington site. Those were the school ages that we have. So they now will be served. I think there's anywhere from about 9 to 10 families that will be provided after-school services as a result of this new arrangement.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, this is a different question, so that's good. And it was great news, too, that I was happy to see that all the lottery, students in lottery were going to be served. That was excellent. Does and I don't know who the right person asked this question, but does every school do an orientation day for, one school before school starts? Is that something that's traditional for each school?
Many of the schools are. The principals just returned, and we met with them yesterday, and they're in the process of organizing that with help from the FACE department. But I can't say at this point in time. Every school will be doing something, whether it's before school starts or during their back-to-school program. It's really up to them and the staff they have and the event that they will traditionally have. So we're working with them to support that if they choose to do it before school starts. Mm-hmm. And we'll be providing you with that information as we get the information also.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to be attending several of those, so I'm interested to see where those are. I know when one of our guest speakers, Miss Arriaga, spoke. Maybe if there was an orientation day that was at her school, she'd be able to take her son there
Right.
and be able to have a chance to do some acclimation before school starts. So
Right.
I
And I
think
do
that'd
know
be-
they're at 4 sites, right? 4 of the sites right now, they definitely have plans, but I'm checking in with the principals regularly to make sure the board is well informed of any activities that they will be having.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Cuneo. On September 3rd, it's one of my favorite days, and I like to go around some of the elementary schools in my area and stop by and welcome the students to their new schools and wish them well for the school year. But this year's is a little bit unique in that we have receiving schools, and none of the receiving schools are in my area. So if there is a school that you would like me to be at on September 3rd, beginning of school, let me know and make sure that I arrange with the principal and I'll be there.
Thank you for that. We definitely need all the support we can get. Again, working with our youth development and our family and community engagement office, we want to make sure that we're welcoming the new riders, that are riding the bus probably for the first time. We want to make sure we're welcoming them. And then the school sites, definitely any support that we can provide. At this point, we do ask that you, anyone else who may be interested in partnering with us during our Sacramento Goes Back to School efforts, contact our family and community engagement office directly.
Well, just let me know and I'll be there.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I don't know where to begin. You go into things and you hope for the best. And I sometimes get disappointed. When I saw the enrollment information, I thought we were going to have real numbers, some sense of real numbers. It is traditional that you lose anywhere from 5 to 10% when you close a school. We know that number. It's been told in 2009 when we closed schools. It's been mentioned over and over while we were going through the hearings for closing schools. We know that that's on average. I know the average already. It's time to come up with the real numbers. I want to see that. I would say the most concerning part is the lack of communication with our parents. I don't know who's responsible for that. But what date are we in right now? What's today's date? The 15th? And school starts on the 3rd? And we have a student that doesn't even know what school they're enrolled in. This is something we did to them. And the next agenda item that we're coming up with, we're so concerned about future students and not having them cross over railroad crossing tracks or anything like that, but we can't even take care of the students that we have. As far as walking attendance, how many students are they responsible for when they walk? These
When
students.
they walk.
Yeah, how many students will they be responsible for?
Let me have Tracy come up here and speak about the audits in general.
Thank you. I don't think we know exactly how many students to expect that are going to be walking. If we need to add additional walking attendance, we can certainly do that. We don't have, as far as that I am aware of at this point in time, a ratio of student to adult as walking attendance. Since I've been in this role in the school district, we've not had walking attendance. This is it's a position that we have in our school district. It is not a position that I have had direct contact with or somebody in that role up until the time that we needed to look into this. So it will be something that we will monitor very closely. I think we have to look at a small number. We've got a max of 15 kids at a bus stop. I definitely don't think that we should go over that, but I think we need to consult with some other experts on what the normal ratio, of student to walking attendant. And we can certainly bring more in if we need to do that. We have the position. Schools can have the choice of who they want in that role. We're going to provide them with the tools that they need, a cell phone, rain gear if necessary, very high visible vests, and some training. So it's something, you know, as I've said when I've spoken to the board regarding transition, we're going to continue to assess and reassess and modify as we go along so that we make sure that the kids are safe going to and from school.
Have you looked at other school districts that have walking attendants that are in use?
Honestly, I have not.
Thank you for your honesty. I would like to
And
see
if you know
if you
of
could-
school districts that utilize walking attendants,
But
send me there.
I'll just tell you that in my work history, I was charged with the responsibility of having to compare our current geographical area that we're responsible for with other similar areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do the research to find out who's like us, and then we go out and seek the information. So putting it on a board member is kind of not protocol here, but I mean, it would be really nice if you can take the initiative to call other districts up and down the state and find out if they have this position.
Very easy. I went to employment positions in other school districts locally, and I didn't see walking attendants. So I didn't see anything locally, but I can certainly, and that does make sense to go outside of the area.
Thank you. And again, thank you for your honesty. As far as the after-school program update on the transportation, I'm very concerned about this. You want to do a semester of real in-depth assessment, and because right now, and understandably so, we have anecdotal data, but it's after the fact planning. We had a captive audience before school let out. The after-school enrollment was taking place before school let out. I was one of those parents, so I know what the process was. As a parent who's a single mom, I had to make sure that my child was picked up after school and that she was in a safe spot. And we can't wait a semester for the school district to come up with a plan that will help me. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of parents in those shoes. And once they make those arrangements, they're not going to undo those arrangements, because then they've secured a secure location for them, for their family. It would have been nice to have it up front.
And we did do some data collection around that. We really relied on our partners because, of course, we all have limited district staff, so we really relied on our partners to help us assess that situation. When we had sites whose partners weren't doing that effectively, we sent district staff out, and some of our parents that were here were really pivotal in letting us know, we know that you've asked this to happen, but it's not happening, for example, at Joseph Bonheim. So we were able to send district staff out to speak directly with parents around what their needs were. We also, as we did the lottery information nights, asked parents to indicate, for example, if they weren't able to come because of transportation, or if they weren't sure yet which school they were assigned to put that information on their lottery slip, so we could at least do that preliminary data collection. What I'm wanting to do is a more in-depth, because we don't have additional funding to have another program in the community. We did do a lot of research around what's already out there and got that information out to our parents. If, for example, a family couldn't take advantage of the after-school program because of transportation, we gave them resources for other providers in the area that they could contact, and then my Parent Resource Center staff were available for parents to walk through that process with them if they needed to apply for child action or other types of child care assistance. I think what I wanted to get at is this transition process doesn't end when school starts on September 3rd, that we want to really continue doing that data collection and assessment throughout the year. So if we can identify additional gaps, we can go looking for solutions for that. So I feel like we've done a good job of assessing what information we have now. But once school starts, we're going to have a whole lot more information about exactly where families do land, how many families did participate in permits, how many families thought they were going to go to one particular site and weren't able to go there because of whatever reason and came back to their home school. So I think more what I wanted to communicate was we're not ending when school starts. We want this to be an ongoing process of engagement with our families. And I think one of the things that came out is that we've had different practices at different school sites. That as a district, we communicated information, but that we need to do a better job of making sure that we have equity around every site and that all of the practices are equal. And we identified some spots that those things weren't happening. So we're excited to be able to dig more in depth into those areas.
I would hope that you would continue your outreach to parents after the first day of school, not just to transition parents and families, but to all parents in the district, because like you guys, I've discovered a lot through this process is that the district doesn't communicate very well with our parents. And so that we do need a lot of help, a lot of focus, and a lot more due diligence in that regard. As far as the signing out, your rationale for the programmatic concerns was the signing out of students. The first thing you do as a parent and you sign your child up for after-school program, you have an option to sign your child saying that they're allowed to walk home after the program is done.
For 4th through 6th grade students.
4th through 6th grade. And so it's a board initiative, correct, that happens? Or is it something that it's after-school program related?
That's a funding related.
It's a funding related.
Yeah. It's part of the after-school grant and the expectations of the CDE programs.
Again, communication would be key here in letting them know that we have this issue, that parents may be able to, more families may be able to utilize these after-school programs if they change their policy and if they look into this. Again, I'm big into communication, that this has to happen. And the fiscal implications, well, what kind of price tag are we going to put on over student safety or academic achievement? Because after-school programs are proven to increase academic achievement of students. And again, we've been targeting schools in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area, and these are the students that need it the greatest. And we still are taking and stripping away their opportunities. As far as the child development section.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question. When you say relocate it, and it's either on slide, it doesn't have a number, maybe slide 12 or slide.
That's where the matrix is, yes.
Yeah. It's on the next slide over. But what does relocated mean?
Moving to another area whereby they are not interested in attending preschool at the receiving site or any of the other designated sites that we have within child development.
So they completely left the district.
Right. They're not participating. They may still be within the community, but they're not participating in our preschool programs. They could be on the outskirts. They're no longer interested.
Thank you very much. The packing and moving process, it's a concern to me in that I heard that some teachers are still awaiting a location to be given to them for their classroom. They don't have a location. It says that it'll be completed on August 17th, but as of today, I still received an email from an individual in the district that says that they don't have a location yet. You don't need to respond. I'm concerned about this. And I know that I spoke with the superintendent earlier about this. But in addition to my concerns that I expressed to you, Superintendent, the home visits on top of the social emotional learning trainings that are taking place, and then on top of that, these particular teachers that don't have a space to move into, that's a lot of stress on them. It's a lot of tasks to complete. And, you know, I'm looking out for the best interest of our children, that these teachers are going to have to oversee and teach and make sure that they're meeting their standards. And we're moving into a different standard system now. It's going to take some learning. And so I just want to express my concerns about that. You know, I think we took too much off. We bit too much off. I think, you know, like my grandma used to tell me, you know, when I serve myself a big plate, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. You know, I think that that's the case here. You know, it was, thank God we didn't close 11 schools, because I don't know what would have happened. But, you know, I mean, it just seems like there's so many things that are going on that perhaps 2 schools, 3 schools at the most would have been suffice, because this is way too much to handle. And the families are the ones that are suffering. And I can't tell you, I've lost count of the number of families that have come to me and said, Diana, we're not coming back next year. And they're almost in tears because they really like their teachers. And they're taking their kids outside of our district. And they're taking them, and they're even paying. Some of these people are paying. They're taking their kids to private schools because they say there's more security there than what they're going to get here. And that, to me, saddens me. And I'm concerned over that because we're a district that should be focused on increasing our revenues. And that means increasing our student population and taking care of the ones that we have. And if this is showing that we can't, and I'm concerned over that. Thank you.
Member Royal.
Thank you, President Cunha, and I will not be I just have a number of questions. And this is a question that was already brought up, but I think it's important to kind of, for me to restate it. Going back to the number of students that currently were part of the 7 or the schools that were closed, to the number of students that are currently back enrolled. And what I'm really most concerned about is the number of students that are still not enrolled. I mean, I know that it's something that you already have available. I think we need to know that information like ASAP. The fact that we have Mrs. Camargo coming up and making a clear example of how her child is still not enrolled, I think it's a very telling issue. If she has been here just about every board meeting that has gone on over the last few months, I mean, what are we expecting to happen to parents that are either not able to come or are as engaged? So I think that it's extremely important that we get a report back of how many of the students that were formally enrolled. And I know that there will be a drop-off of students that will move on to private and so on and so forth. But, I mean, is it half? Is it 2/3? I mean, we should have an idea of how many students are still not enrolled. And that would be very telling as to the kind of work that needs to happen over the next 2 weeks. What I am not willing to do is look at this in terms of numbers, because then basically that means that we're willing to see them as collateral damage to a decision that the district made. And if these were your children, I'm not sure that anybody would like to see themselves as that. And so I really want to move on beyond the percentages.
I would like to see how many, and then move on to the next question, which is the issue of communication. And I know that, and I think it's slide 14. There's the on phase 2 at the bottom of the slide says effective personal contacts completed for all quote unquote reachable families. And the specific question that I have there is, if can somebody define what reachable means? And I know that this is probably for child development, but I would assume that this is something that probably parallels to the other grades as well.
So Board Member Arroyo, Child Development was very diligent in attempting to reach all of our families who were expected to return. The children were 3 years old last year. This year they're 4 years old. And so we sent several letters to families, as well as attempted to contact them in a number of ways. Some visits were actually made to the home. We just could not connect with those families. And so in terms of the ones that we were, of course, we did contact them, and we were able to either enroll them in an adjacent site or determine next steps for their preschool youngster.
Okay, so we're talking letters and calls?
Letters and calls, yes. And we were really persistent, and we have typically been very persistent with our returning youngsters. If they come to us at 3 years of age, we've been very persistent over time. It's not just as a result of the right-sizing initiative, but it's something that we typically do because certainly they've already been a part of our preschool population. We want them to continue, and of course, the dosage effect, the more time that they spend in preschool, the better off they are.
And then as far as reaching and efforts to reach the rest of the grades, is there any information you can provide? The types of communications or efforts?
Right around the open enrollment completion process, principals did one of three things. They actually called every parent from the closed school principals, either called every parent, made a personal contact. We had a confirmation notice that was for those schools who parents weren't called or did not have numbers. We had confirmation notices handed out to every student, and those confirmation notices were given in the primary language of the family, so the translations were available. Those notifications needed to be returned and signed. We followed up on that. Those students who did not return that confirmation notice that specifically noted their receiving site, we employed the Parent Engagement Center and the Mock Center to actually do personal phone calls and touch base with those families to let them know what their receiving site was. And then I can tell you, for the parents that they could not reach, I personally crafted a letter to let them know what their receiving site was, and those letters were translated and actually sent home to those addresses. So either through actual contact, through notifications that parents signed, or through a mailer, every student that was attending a closed school site, the families were notified.
Okay, and then a follow-up, and I appreciate that, and then a follow-up question. Can you explain, or anybody can, the circumstances under which, and this is more of as a test subject matter more than anything, the circumstances for which the son of Mrs. Camargo was not enrolled. What I'm trying to get at is, was this just a fluke, or is this something that we needed to fix for somebody else or for the entire system?
Well, it is not an entire system issue. In fact, for those parents who have accessed the permit process, they have been designated, their students have been rolled into the designated receiving site until they have that permit approved. So they do have a school. Why Ms. Camargo's son is not in the system is probably just Fluke, because we do have databases and we know where the students are attending. And we do know who those students are. So I would certainly have tech services or staff follow up on that, most definitely, because he should be in the system.
Okay. Obviously, the issue of after-school programs is something that has already been mentioned, and I will not go further with questioning as much as saying I am really concerned the fact that we will have a lot of students that will be just missing out, either because the receiving school will not have enough spots or transportation will not be afforded to them. And so I'll leave it at that. A couple of very, very specific questions that I have. Just one remaining for now. Split classes. Do we have any idea how many split classes we have on the receiving schools?
I do not have that information right now because those enrollments are a little fluid right now. So I really don't have that information. But we'll look into that.
Do we know when we will have a better idea?
So that information, again, like with all school sites, there's a lot of registrations that are still taking place. I mean, we're getting hundreds every day now at the enrollment center, and what happens is those students get registered, and then we actually have to physically see who shows up at the first day in the first week of school, and then so that leveling process takes place in the first week or two. That happens across the district. That's traditional, and then we decide how we're going to move teachers around from school site to school site to address the needs, and that has happened in all instances. I would like to just take the moment just to remind folks that again, all of those students that at a school site that was closed were automatically enrolled in their new home school. They then had the choice to go through open enrollment. They were given priority, and I want to say that all families, and Sarah Noguchi can confirm, but all families that wanted to go through the open enrollment got their first or their second choice. And those families that didn't want to go through the open enrollment, and some families did. I mean, some families chose not to go through the open enrollment process. They're automatically enrolled in their home school. That they can go through the intra-permit process, which is happening right now. But what we have to do is we have to level, we have to see who registers, and then once families that have registered, again, neighborhood schools, then we can look at how many seats and spots we have available based upon class sizes. So, that's a process that is happening now. I also want to assure that, again, there's been ongoing communication. We've had blending activities before school even ended. All of the receiving sites had on and several multiple blending activities where families were communicated, not only confirming that they had been either registered in their new school or they had gone through the open enrollment process, but that they were then invited and encouraged to go to blending activities. And all of our school sites have been asked to and have scheduled, again, speaking about receiving sites, they're scheduling either opening activities, orientation activities, back to school activities, and that communication process, continues to go on and on. It is summertime as well. So, we're mindful of all those things that are taking place. So I just wanted to make sure that we address those few questions. Did I miss anything out, Ms. Noguchi?
Did a great job summarizing. Good evening. I think there's one thing that I can support the board in understanding the dynamics of the numbers. Within a day, as of last week, we were getting approximately 100 new registration packets. Now, those registration packets could be from Closure Kids, could be from anyone in the district, or kids coming into the district. That was last week. This week, it's really heated up. I was over at the enrollment center 3 times today, and at no time was there anything less than 20 people in line. Roughly 170 packets were turned in today. That's just today, kids moving. So maybe 20 kids from this school and 17 kids from that school and 4 kids from that school. Until that levels out, it's difficult to say, well, if we have splits, difficult to say where the kids have landed. It's difficult to say who's within which school until after that whole process finishes. That won't finish until at least the first week of school. First day of school would be nice, but there's hundreds of kids that are still moving even within that first 1, 2, and 3 days of school. So questions around split classes, we're going to do our best the week before to level classes, to take a look at teachers and ensuring that every student has a seat. But until they land in the seat, we really don't know. As of right now, we have 625 registration packets that aren't even in the system. Now, last Friday, the enrollment center closes on Fridays just so they can enroll the packets. In addition, there's 4 additional office managers working overtime at the end of the day, putting in packets as well. That's Monday through Wednesday. Thursday, they stay late. And then Friday, they close to put in registration packets. So as of last Friday, there was 505. They close on Friday, put in packets. They open. They're closed on Saturdays. Folks are coming in on Saturday to put in packets, but we still had an additional 150 starting Monday. So we're not even completely caught up, and that's a lot of people working overtime and on Saturday. So bottom line, I understand you want numbers. We want numbers. Teachers want numbers. Principals want numbers. But until this whole process is played out, which is really the first week of September, we're really not going to know the numbers.
Thank you. And then one very last question, and this is a request that will probably be determined a little bit more as the process continues. And it's been asked before, not only by myself, other board members, and people in the public, is I would really like to see a compare and contrast, a benefit analysis, cost-benefit analysis of this, as far as what were all the costs that went into really transitioning. And I'm talking about, from lost enrollment to the new positions, walking attendants. I'm very happy to hear that the transportation department is hiring more positions. I think we need even more of that. The facilities work that needed to be done. I think that there's a number of things that have gone to work this process. It's no secret. I was very skeptical of this decision by the district from the get-go. But I think it would be important, at least for this board member, to know that as you go through the process, this question will continue to come up, and it would be great if the members of the staff can start helping us tabulate what that will be, because it's a question that will come up in the future. Maybe an uncomfortable one, but I think it's one that will continue to be asked. And it would be easier if in the end we already have that kind of identified, and then we can have a better idea if this was a wise decision or not financially. I know that there will be different interests or different ideas as to how to best present the information to decide if it was or not. Nonetheless, numbers are numbers, and if there was an expenditure specifically for this purpose of transitioning, I think that should be tabulated in there. So thank you very much for your time.
Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Cunha. Okay, so I just want to point out the obvious. It's very clear to me that we don't have the resources to make sure, or the employees, to make sure that all of our kids are being taken care of by closing 7 schools. I'm not okay with, I know that there's going to be growing pains, and we've said that over and over tonight. There's going to be growing pains. We know that. We can fix them as they come along, but I'm not willing to just wait for the dust to settle and then fix the problems, because we're talking about our children. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir, because I know that you are all working very, very hard, and you're all very smart, very capable people. There's just not enough resources to make sure that these things aren't happening. Thank you, Member Hansen, for bringing up home visits. As you know, I sit on the board. I'm the school board appointee for home visits, and I spoke to Lisa Lavasser today, and she told me they're not doing any home visits right now. I asked, I said, I want to go and I want to visit some of the receiving schools to the families that were displaced and now in new schools. They're not happening yet. Okay? So I just want to make that very clear, and you were right. They're not happening. In regards to Ms. Camargo's issue, my understanding is that the permit process, they had to submit permits because the receiving schools were taken off the list for open enrollment. Is that correct? Yes? I'm getting nods. Okay.
Answer that.
Okay.
Receiving schools were not, they weren't accepting students until after we could see if there was a space available, and that's why there are some intras right now. We're going to wait 2 weeks to see which kids have landed and registration settles down a bit before we can see which spaces are available. There are many parents that go through the intra process, but that does, that waits till roughly the week before school starts. Now, the numbers that I just shared with you, that was very much like the numbers that were last year. Now, we could certainly compare last year to this year, and it probably is up to some degree, but this is exactly what we felt last year also. So this isn't as a result of the closures. Certainly the closures have added to, but this is something that we've gone through, at least for me, in my experience, this is my third year doing it.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and maybe this is something that you can look into and come back later, but I was told as of tonight coming into this meeting that there was approximately 50 families that had submitted permits that are still waiting, and the person that was supposed to be doing these permits is on vacation for 2 weeks.
Actually, no, there hasn't been any permits that have been accepted at the high schools and the middle schools, yes. At elementary, we're not even going to take a look at the permits, and we were just talking with principals this week until a week from Thursday. We can't accept any permits at this point until after we see who is in the school. For instance, you have a school, you have a third grade, we have 32 kids in that classroom. We can't go accept the 5 permits that are sitting there waiting. We have to wait to see how many kids are in the classroom, how many kids show up, because we will accept some after the first week of school as well. But we first have to ensure that those students who went through open enrollment and the neighborhood kids have settled and have a seat. And then if there's anything left over, we absolutely want to try to accommodate as many parents and as many students as we can.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. That's not what's being told to the parents.
I can certainly talk with Mike Crosby over in the enrollment center to see what sort of message is going out, but it's been very clear with principals this week. We've had principal meeting the last 3 days, and their direction has been go over to the enrollment center while you're here, prioritize, because there's a way for, as far as the timeliness of the permits and when they came in, prioritize. So a week from Thursday, when we do have some better data and we have more information about students in the class, we can make decisions around accepting some of those interests. There have been a few exceptions where we know that there's, in one school, Camellia, for instance, we know that there's 21 kinder spots available. Well, there was also 11 inter-district transfers, which is out of the district, from Elk Grove. Elk Grove started today. We were confident that there's going to still be room available even for any intras, or not intras, but neighborhood kids. So in that case, we did accept it, but that is the only case that I know of that we've accepted permits up to this point.
Okay. Well, you'll give us an update on what you find out from that office. Thank you. Was there a survey that was sent out to the parents that are being displaced, asking what the logistics of how their kids were going to be going to school? Like, would they be walking? Would they be riding a bus? Do they have special needs that we need to be looking out for? So that way we know what to expect on September 3rd?
Can you elaborate on your question? Because I'm trying to, did we survey our parents as far as how they were going to get to school on the first day?
Right. Of the 7 schools that were closed, and all the kids that were displaced from those 7 schools, was there a survey asked of them to the new schools? Would they be busing? Would they be walking? So we don't know what to expect until September 3rd?
At this point, no, we did not do a survey surveying our school, the families from the school closure sites. No.
Okay. Sorry. We're hearing a lot from our parents about the communication, how it's not working. I think we could really learn something from the child development department. We talked about meet and greets. We talked about letters and phone calls that had gone home. I know that we're talking about much more students than what are in the child development, but it seems like we could kind of take their model and pass it over to the displaced kids. Probably too late now, but lastly, I just want to say we really need to listen to our parents. They're here. They're not here to complain. They're here because they have issues. We could really learn something from them. They live this life every day with their kids. They're in our school system. They know they're not getting. I see nods out there saying we're not getting any communication. We haven't gotten it since school ended, but we're saying what we did. So please just reach out to the parents that aren't here, because they're not just saying that they're not receiving it just to say it. They're really not receiving it. That's all I have.
Vice President Kennedy.
I just want to reiterate something that Ms. Noguchi said as far as the numbers being fluid. I understand the frustration that board members feel about this, and they want data and all that. But this isn't an issue that's unique to closed schools. This is an issue that's not unique to this district. Now, unfortunately, it's gotten to be very, very best guess, but it's still sometimes that. Members Arroyo and Rodriguez, I'm sure, can back me up on this, that when we came to this board, it was, we hear, we'll know the first week of school. I mean, that is music to our ears back then. I mean, there were kids sitting in hallways, not knowing where they were going to be placed for weeks back 5 years ago. And with the enrollment center and a lot of the different procedures and processes that we now follow, it is so much better, but it's still not perfect because it's impossible. We're trying to speculate and who's going to show up. So that's not an issue that is unique to closed or receiving schools. And I just wanted to make that point.
Member Arroyo.
Yes, and a question that I forgot to ask regarding the home school visitation project. So all the schools that are receiving schools will be having the program at those schools?
All of the receiving schools participate except William Land. The program is a voluntary program. We can't force our teachers to do it. We can encourage them. We can model it for them. I go on home visits every other month. But again, we can't force it. More and more are being trained, but all of our receiving schools, except for William Land, are doing them at the moment.
And then in the question that I wanted to get to is, all of them have the funds to operate them?
Yes, and we've provided and we've offered extra supports for those schools if there are more teachers that want to. Do you have something to add, Ms. Bell?
So for the receiving sites, if schools last year did not all of our schools last year expended all of the funding that they were allocated for parent-teacher home visit. So usually that would come back into the general fund. This year we allowed the parent-teacher home visit to be able to use those funds for receiving sites to do additional home visits. So usually if a school didn't expend their home visit allocation, we wouldn't carry it over to the next year. But this year, for receiving sites, we allowed schools to be able to do that.
Is this something that we have a number of dollars that are going to each school for?
Yes.
Okay. Can that be emailed to us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Student Member Kovalchuk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to quickly say about split classes. In my elementary school, I had 4th and 5th and 5th and 6th grade as split classes. And everything that I can remember for it. It was very fun when you were younger and you had the older kids to look up to. And then when you were older, because I was in the 5th and 4th grade class in my 5th grade year, it was very fun being able to model for them how to do things and everything. So I don't know if it's because of my teacher and the way he balanced things and everything, but split classes aren't always a very bad thing. Just wanted to say I have very favorable experiences with that, so something to think about.
Thank you. We have a member Pritchett.
Thank you. I just wanted to get back to the home visits. I did get a text message from Lisa Lavasser that said that receiving school sites visits are happening. Some schools started this week, but most are planning next week. So my apologies. I was told today that they were not happening. So.
Okay, sorry. Kind of trailed off. I thought you were going to keep going. I just have a couple issues. One, piggybacking on Member Arroyo's comments about the after-school programs. Did all of the students from the closed sites get into after-school programs, or did they not?
Yes, every student that did the lottery that wanted to participate, that wanted to get into after school, did. And even after lottery was closed, program managers still accepted applications for students on first come, first serve. So as of now, every student that has applied has gotten in. And I think I mentioned if we have additional students coming in and we don't have space for them, we'll put them on waiting lists first come, first serve.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is regarding to the transportation. We made some decisions in regard to bus routes. Is that correct? We've made some final decisions, or is that still an outstanding issue?
Decisions regarding bus routes. We have we've added 9 bus routes. We're utilizing 2 bus routes that were already in existence last year for a total of 11 routes to cover for all the school closures.
And so for kids from the closing schools, we made some policy decisions on who was going to get transportation, or are all kids getting transportation from the closed schools?
Basically, the students that were in the closing school areas with the new boundaries, those are the students who are going to be eligible for transportation. That's where we set up our routes.
So so every kid who attended a closed school last year will be able to avail themselves of a bus to get to their new school this year?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. Pretty much. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That's all I have. I appreciate everybody's efforts in this, and I appreciate the presentation.
Sure.
Item 9.2, an action item to approve resolution number 2758, initiating the transfer of territory from Twin Rivers Unified School District to Sacramento City Unified School District. I believe I saw we have Mr. Behrens obviously here today.
Yes, Mr. President, may it please the board, a brief overview of what is before you. This was a conference item on August 1st, and the direction was to bring it back for consideration for action at this board meeting. The resolution 2758 would, if approved, join Twin Rivers with regard to uninhabited and unimproved territory between the districts, which is currently in the Twin Rivers district of approximately 50 acres. At the last meeting, Mr. Phil Angelides described the proposed development and also said that the property owner would consent. So in the case of a joint petition and the consent of the property owner, if the board approves this resolution tonight, the process would go forward to the county superintendent of schools, who would have up to 30 days to review the petition, and thereafter there would be a minimum of 1 public hearing in each of the 2 school districts. Because this is uninhabited territory, it would go to the county committee, and their decision would be final. There would be no vote, and the territory would be subsequently transferred. So that is the issue before you tonight. Mr. Angelides is in attendance for any questions the board may wish to ask, and staff may wish to comment as well. But that's the legal overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Do we have any public comment, Mr. Ross? No public comment. Does the board have any questions? We do have Mr. Angelides here. We have Member Hanson.
Yeah, I have a question from the staff report. I was going to say maybe we should put this over so you can sit here and enjoy, I know you love long meetings, all your years of public service, Mr. Angelides, but I had a question on the staff report. Financial considerations, it said there would be no immediate effect on current funding, but it says it will potentially be able to collect developer fees from the project. Can you explain why it would only potentially be able to collect developer fees? I'd assume that if it's built, there will be developer fees.
I will defer to Mr. Angelides on that, but essentially, until there is an approved development and until building permits are issued, only at the time that a building permit or permits are issued are fees paid. And that's based upon the fees at the time. Ms. Kathy Allen can also address the issue, but that's why it says potential, because it's just beginning in the planning stage, is my understanding. We do not do any CEQA analysis. The county committee would do the CEQA analysis with regard to the territory transfer. Mr. Angelides, of course, will have to, and the owner will process their development with the city, and that will implicate CEQA and all sorts of planning decisions.
Right, so at some point, the staff would be able to tell us, assume when the number of projects is determined and start moving forward, what our anticipated fees, would be for that.
I'll defer to Ms. Allen on that one, but the fees, are, as you know, are based on housing and also industrial and commercial development. This would be housing. So it'd be the square footage amount at the time, and it's adjusted, I believe, every 2 years. But Ms. Allen probably has much more expertise in this area than I.
Thank you.
So currently, we collect level 1 fees at $3.20 a square foot. So if somebody goes and pulls a permit today, that's what they would pay on a house. When this development, if this development is annexed into our school district, and at the time any permits are pulled on an individual basis, then we would charge whatever the rate is, the going rate is the time that we've also been able to justify through our developer fee justification study. And the State Allocation Board does typically increase level 1 fees every even year in January. So, I mean, we're roughly, at this point, we can guesstimate about $2 million based on an average size home of about 2,000 square feet. But, it's going to be, some will be lower, some will be higher.
Thank you.
We have Vice President Wu.
Well, if we're done with the discussion, I was going to move the staff's recommendation of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice President Wu to approve resolution number 2758 with a second by Vice President Kenny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution has passed. Item 9.3, approval of revised board policy number 6142.7 on physical education. It's a conference item, first reading, presented by Heather Deckard.
On already. We have there we go. Good evening, Board President Cunha, Superintendent Raymond, and members of the board. My name is Heather Deckard, and I am the Physical Education Coordinator for the district. Tonight, I'm here to present proposed revisions to Board Policy 6142.7, Physical Education. I'll share with you the history of recent changes to the state standards and curricular frameworks in physical education and newly updated district policies that warrant these changes. I will also share with you our engagement and feedback process, as well as highlight the proposed revisions and plan next steps. 2004 was the last time 6142.7 was updated. Since that time, the state of California has adopted state physical education model content standards in 2005. And a new physical education framework was adopted in 2008. These documents provide guidance regarding curricular and instructional content and explicitly outline what students should know and be able to do as a result of the physical education program. In addition, in 2012, the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education adopted a revision to Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness Policy, which included physical education. Due to all these changes, the district began reviewing Board Policy 6142.7, Physical Education, during the 2012-2013 school year. The following stakeholders, district departments, and community partners were involved with the review and revision of the policy. This included groups such as students, parents, academic office, and Alliance for Healthier Generation. The slide in front of you outlines the proposed revisions, of which I will highlight a few. The old policy had a general opening paragraph, a section on special care which outlines the physical education activity for students with medical conditions and physical education under adverse weather conditions, as well as a section on exemptions. The new policy has additions to those, such as a greater emphasis on the use of curricular frameworks and standards, greater attention to moderate to vigorous physical activity, details of the physical education minutes mandate, description of physical education for students with disabilities, the requirements for physical fitness testing, and an outline of program evaluation components. Once approved, the next steps will be to disseminate Policy 6142.7, Physical Education, to all stakeholders to make them aware of their rights and responsibilities regarding physical education. Provide coaching support to administrators, teachers, to ensure implementation of quality physical education. Provide an ongoing training for staff to assist schools in achieving high quality, standard-based physical education instruction with the use of the California State Physical Education Model Content Standards, Common Core State Standards, and 21st Century Skills to prepare every student for a lifetime of physically active, healthy, well-being life. We're also going to continue to support the work of the Physical Education Initiative and develop and disseminate 6142.7 Physical Education Administrative Regulations. This concludes the presentation. I will take questions after public comment. Thank you.
Mr. Forrest? Could you look over and see if we have any public comment? Oh, no public comment. Thank you, Mr. Forrest. I know it's out of your job description.
Yes.
Do we have any board comment or questions? We have Vice President Kenny.
Just the comment that every time you get up, I'm thrilled that we have not only your position, but we have you filling it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Kennedy.
And we have Board Member Hanson.
I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the process of doing this. Just one of the things that I'm really keen on is health and wellness for students and for faculty and our staff. And this would have been a perfect thing for me to be involved in, frankly, and I'm a little bit disappointed that I learned about it here. And I was wondering what board involvement was there in the drafting and creation of these new policies.
I don't believe so. I just want to make sure. So I have to say, I apologize. The no board was invited. We went to the DLAC meetings. We went to the PTA meetings. We went to parent coffee mornings. We did have department meetings on it. We had a PE steering committee, but you're absolutely right. We didn't have a board. Although we did invite board members to the Coordinated School Health Committee meeting, which is where it started in. And we didn't have attendance, but I think that was before you.
I just encourage staff and the superintendent in the future, when you're revising curricular policies, to invite a board member so we can participate in that.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of questions about it, but I need to probably, I'd prefer to sit down with staff and not go through all of it here. I'm a little bit loath to even vote yes at this time.
We're not voting
because-
tonight. Member Hanson, tonight's not the vote.
So there'll be some time to get some information. I'd very much appreciate having an opportunity to meet with staff on this and at the sometime in maybe next week and just talk about some of the details. Thanks.
Seeing no other board members, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
On to the next one.
I was,
You
okay.
got one nice comment from you, I'm not doing it.
We have item 9.4, approval of revised board policy number 5030 on student wellness. It's a conference and first reading. Ms. Heather Deckard again.
Presentation. There is.
Our slide's getting lost.
Mr. Forrest, can you do that too?
He's getting up.
If not, I can just move on.
Paper's gone, so.
Turned in another one.
We didn't get any.
I'll just keep moving.
It helps, if it helps anyone, we were not given any.
Okay, one was submitted, but I will just continue on. How about that? So we can keep the
Sounds good.
meeting moving. So good evening once again. My name is Heather Deckard, Physical Education Coordinator for the district. Tonight, I'm here to present proposed revisions to Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness. I'll share with you the rationale for the changes to recently adopted Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness, as well as highlight the proposed revisions and plan the next steps. In 2012, the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education adopted a revision to the Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness Policy, which included physical education. Due to several updates by the state and the district, beginning reviewing Board Policy 6142.7, physical education, during the 2012-2013 school year, this prompted the district to also review the student wellness policy to ensure the language between both policies were consistent. Thank you. The following stakeholders, district departments, and community partners were involved with the review and revision of the policy. Again, this included groups such as the students, parents, academic office, and Alliance for Healthier Generation. The slide in front of you outlines the proposed revisions, of which I will highlight a few. The old policy had a detailed physical education section, but the rest of the policy pertaining to health education, nutrition, and staff wellness were not as detailed. The new policy has additions such as updated references to other policies related to the student wellness policy. The physical education section has 2 paragraphs, which is consistent with other sections in the policy and is consistent with Board Policy 6142.7's opening paragraphs. These revisions are being proposed to eliminate redundancy with the proposed revisions of the physical education policy. Once approved, the next steps will be to disseminate the policy 5030 student wellness to all stakeholders to make them aware of their rights and responsibilities regarding health and wellness. Provide support and resources to schools to ensure implementation of the student wellness policy. Provide ongoing training for staff to assist schools to prepare every student for a lifetime of, again, physical activity, health, and well-being. and continue to support the work of the Coordinated School Health Committee, which we would love still to see a board member join us on that committee anytime. Thank you. I'll take questions now.
Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment.
We do have one comment on 9.3 from Maria Rodriguez.
Good evening, President Cunyo, members of the board, and Superintendent Raymond and Ms. Deckard. My name is Maria Rodriguez, and one of my roles is that I do serve on Sacramento Council of PTAs, and I would like to thank Ms. Deckard. She did come and speak to us, and I would like to inform you about some of the concerns that we had. Many of the parents who are on the Sacramento Council of PTA have students who are very active in extracurricular sports, band, and also ROTC. I'm not really sure about which policy, the first one or the second one, impacts this. But just so you know, our children have to make very difficult choices. My son is entering JFK as a freshman, and I believe that the policy is going to have to force him to choose between PE, Spanish, and band. And actually, PE is not a choice because of this policy, I think. And that was our concern, is that they would, whereas in the past, we can see that band, there's a lot of physical activity. They're marching on the fields. In fact, for 1 week, my son's going to be in band camp. They call it band camp, but it's really about 8 hours out on the field in the sun marching. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention that there's not clarity, and maybe there's some form where we can understand. I don't know if my son's going to meet his requirements if he doesn't take PE. I can't see him giving up band, and Spanish is going to be essential for his future career. So I guess I'm just seeking guidance from Ms. Deckard about how to go forward with this. I really don't know, actually. Again, back to communication. I don't feel like I've been informed. I mean, in the past, band has been counted as PE, but I think it's going to change, and I need to find out, because if he needs to change his class, JFK has already told me that we can't change any of our kids' classes. And if he needs to take PE to graduate, to get into a UC or something, I need to know soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I, too, had to drop band my senior year of high school because of requirements. Do we have an answer to the question posed?
Yeah, so PE is a requirement for graduation. And in the past, marching band has been able to count for physical education credit. However, with the new frameworks and the standards documents, it's important that anything counting for physical education meets the standards that are outlined in the physical education standards framework. And so we've run into some issues with, as far as, say, federal program monitoring, where our programs are being reviewed, and it's come to light that even though there's physical activity in those courses, the content standards aren't addressed in marching band. The content standards for physical education aren't addressed in marching band. And so we're working with sites to, find alternatives such as independent study or ways that students can meet all of the requirements for physical education and still participate in those programs.
So currently it looks like when the revised policy, it's just the athletics that gets the exemption.
Yes,
None
that's
of the
the only one
other
that's allowed.
Classes or extracurriculars reference
Correct.
would get
so
that.
the ROTC, the marching band, and the issues are either not meeting the curricular frameworks, what's outlined in curricular frameworks, or credentialing.
Well, I hope we continue to work on that, because I
Yes.
had the same situation when I was in high school.
Yes, it does become an issue.
It is an issue. Thank you. I guess we kind of skip back to physical education there. In regard to the, we have Member Rodriguez. Or you want me to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So not specific to the policy, but in general, just kind of what I'd like to see out of our district going forward. I had occasion, and I've talked with Ms. Cronick when I first was elected, actually, about the Hiram Johnson clinic, in essence. And to me, that's the clinic at our high schools is the direction we need to go. And I know it's a funding issue, and I know we have some clinics, and I don't know the current state of Hiram Johnson, clinic. I haven't been there in over a year, and I visited it pretty regularly my first couple of years on the board. But I would just, as a policy kind of direction of this district, I think it behooves us to begin to look into how to leverage federal, state, and local dollars to provide needed health care for kids, especially in low-income neighborhoods. And I think, if I read correctly, schools in Cincinnati are doing a wonderful job of this right now. And I just think it's the direction the school district needs to go. We need to begin to have our high schools and our schools kind of the hub of wellness and the hub of health, not only for the kids who are at our schools, but also for the surrounding community. And so I would urge district staff, and I would urge the district to try to look into replicating the Hiram Johnson Clinic. I'm not even sure. Do we have a registered nurse back there? Oh, yeah. Good. Oh, great. I haven't seen it. Great. I know we lost one for a little while. So, I really believe it's the direction we need to go. I really believe it serves the kids in the campus. It serves the community. It becomes a hub of the community. It becomes essential to the community, and it kind of lifts all boats. And so I would really urge this district to start to move in that direction more robustly, to really aggressively try to find dollars. And I don't know anything about this stuff, but Obamacare, we have a whole new landscape of healthcare coming through. And I know Congresswoman Matsui talks a lot about local dollars being spent on healthcare. And so it's just, for me, I think it should be a priority in this area. And it's something that we could do very well, and it's something that we can expand upon. And we have some knowledge of how to do it already. And we could become just real assets to communities that need them. And so with that, Member Rodriguez.
Mr. President and Board, I apologize, but I've been called away for a family emergency, so I'm going to have to leave immediately. Thank you.
Sorry, Patrick. Yep. Thank you, President Cunha. So just a couple of things. I was approached the other day by an institute called the Art of Living Institute, and they have this YES program where they teach children these emotional type meditation things to better themselves. And they say they run this program alongside or with the PE program. What does this policy do for things like this that can come in and teach children coping skills along with breathing techniques to help them improve their physical activity? Question. Because they can already do that. We already have a lot of partnerships with groups that come in and teach teachers about brain breaks and different things like breathing techniques or yoga or other things like that. This policy really is kind of an overview policy that relates to other policies, and those go more in depth into things. Mm-hmm. So let me see if anybody else can answer that better than I can. More of an opportunity.
It sounds like an opportunity that our teachers might be able to take advantage of, because the professional learning that's outlined in the policy calls for teachers to receive ongoing professional learning around building programs that support health and wellness. So if you have further information about it, we'd be happy to hear more.
Yeah, I can direct somebody to contact you, but then you can look in the meantime, look at the artofliving.org. Okay. And then I guess you go into their programs, youth programs on there, and then it's called the Youth Empowerment Seminar, YES, YES for short. Okay. And then you'll learn a little bit more about it. But somebody approached me, and then I was like, how serendipitous we're talking about it. So, but then, they say that they come in for like the first 15 minutes of at the beginning of PE to teach the students stuff. And then I'm thinking, my first thought to them was, how do you fit into the standards? Because everything's so timed and everything is, just so exact these days. I couldn't speak on behalf of the district, and I encouraged them to reach out to the district as well.
Thank you for that.
And then just a comment.
I guess two comments. Number one comment is thank you for inviting me to the committee. Keep those invitations coming because I think the couple of invitations you sent, they conflicted with another thing on my calendar. But please keep those invitations, even if you think you're bombarding my email box. Don't just keep them coming, and to everybody else on the board. So I really appreciate being invited. And so the last thing is, I think you would be very happy to know that this board has made a commitment to do a 5K walk run in October 26th. So the board has stepped up to take a challenge, so including our student board member. So it's just a board member exclusive team. So
well, we can invite them to join our team.
Well, I mean, we could. But I would like to see maybe the district form their team, and maybe we can have a little friendly competition.
I think we could take you up on that.
It is a fundraiser event, and I'm not sure if I can say the name. Is that legal? Yes. So it's for a fundraiser for the organization called My Sister's House, which provides assistance to domestic women, and mostly women, right? He's the board member for that organization for domestic violence. And so it's a fun day. Women and children, they provide safe housing and TROs, assistance, and food and clothing.
And training.
That's great. Thank you for being examples and showing everybody else in the district how to lead a healthy life and things that we can do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's good to hear.
I'm expecting President Cuneo to carry me on his back.
I'm a very fast runner.
I'd like to see the superintendent create a team, and then maybe we can.
Anything else?
Great. Seeing no more questions, comments, thank you very much. I guess I will take a little bit of a poll here. We're at 9.5. We brought 9.5 back because of a vote tie. There were 3 no votes last time. Are people in the same position they were in last time around OE 10? Member Pritchett? Because I'd rather just pull it if we're just going to vote 3-3 again. We can pull it and come back if you'd like.
Okay.
No, if you have a suggestion, please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I would just like the board to review the OEs once again to see if maybe we can come up with a better way to evaluate.
And I think that's a good suggestion. As I talked to Member Pritchett offline, my position on OEs are that, if I'd like to see, if you're going to vote no, I'd like to have a positive direction forward. So to show what you like or what you don't like and what you think should change so that we can, it's our review. If you don't like the whole process, then I guess that's a different conversation. But if there are parts of the analysis, review, grading, whatever it might be, that you don't like that can be corrected, that can lead to a positive outcome, it's a conversation I think that would suit us well. Member Hanson.
And I'm never shy of showing my ignorance, so let me do so once again. But I don't even know what the OEs are. I mean, I understand, just from osmosis of reading the reports over the 9 months that I've been here. But it'd be helpful for me and probably, other folks maybe in the audience and
give a history,
Christina, to let us know what it is, what's the goal, the OEs, and maybe it's time to revise them. I don't know how long they've been used, but that could be something that would be potentially beneficial. And it doesn't need to be, I don't know if it needs to be in a open board meeting or whether we do it as maybe another educational seminar where we can invite our interested parents and students to be part of that and we can have a conversation about it. But there might be an opportunity to use this as something positive moving forward, or maybe it's the right tool and I just don't know enough about it to know that.
I'm just trying to find the best way to do it. But yeah, that's not a problem. A little bit of it predates even me. So it was going. Member Rodriguez, go ahead. You were here before I was.
Yeah. I guess as the historian of the board.
What I was going to suggest is have someone email us all with the history and the development of it, and then we can go from there. Would that be fair? Sure. Let's keep it short, though.
I'll give you the 30-second. A few years ago, a majority of the board decided to move forward with the approval of a model of governance called coherent governance. And that model required certain things, and one of them was to specifically state in paper a lot of the ways that the board would interact with the superintendent, being that the superintendent is our one person point of contact with the district. And so the operational expectations were the items that the superintendent would measure his performance as to what we, the board, had prescribed to be the policy as to how the board was going to move forward. And so, in a nutshell, basically, that's basically what the OES are, unless the superintendent would like to. Given the fact that you write them yourself or you prepare them, I want to give your take on what they are for you.
Well, during the governance sessions, there was one part of that called operational expectations, and the board looked at what all those potential areas were. There were operational issues, and the board set out a number of areas. As you can see, if you take a look at OE 10 as an example, you have OE 10, then you have 10.1, and there were interpretations that were laid out as say OE 10.1 about engaging parents. That then staff developed. I developed an interpretation that came back to the board. The board approved the interpretation. Then I suggested indicators for compliance. Those came back to the board. The board agreed and signed off on those indicators of compliance. And then I am to present evidence of compliance on an annual cycle. These OEs come back to be then viewed by the board and reviewed as whether they're in compliance, out of compliance, or in compliance in part. But again, that was an iterative process done with the board at the time, and they can be reviewed on an annual basis as part of my evaluation process. I can suggest certain parts of the evaluation that I think are no longer applicable, and can suggest that some changes to certain indicators or other things be made. And I think the board could as well decide, well, there needs to be an adjustment in some of these parts and one part could be taking a look at the OEs and saying, does that interpretation, does that section, is it still relevant? Are those indicators still indicators that we want? Again, that was all done and brought back to the board in every process. So now I go through this process, and staff goes through this process of providing evidence of either being in compliance or not. And that's what you see here, as well as attachments through the various appendices.
Member Rodriguez.
Okay. In short, there's a book called Policy Governance. So you should read that and make a determination for yourself whether this is the right thing for this district. Personally, I didn't vote for it, but here we are today. We're doing it. And so I think that the one good thing, I think you could leave everything away, what we've got on that coherent governance, except for one piece, which I think is useful, but I don't think we're doing it right. And that's the monitoring piece.
So would you suggest that we do?
And this is why I say no, and this is what you're trying to get at, is that, it's a self-evaluation of how well. So I understand and I believe in the interpretation that the superintendent does, but in terms of how we get there to the evaluation part, I believe that each board member should have one person designated, whatever policy it is that we're monitoring at that point, and then have that team of people go out as our surrogates to go and perform the evaluation of whether those services are being provided or not. Because otherwise, you're just kind of like letting the fox into the hen house, and, we're not, it's kind of, are we really getting our bang for our buck and what the intention was out of it? So the board is supposed to be evaluating the superintendent, not the superintendent evaluating himself. But we can't be at all places at one time. So the board can, have surrogates go out there. And I think Overall, the overarching concept of policy governance is that you give the people the power to then tell us how to govern at the same time, because really we're here for our constituencies, not for us. So I think that would be the better solution. You would find me saying yes more often than not to a policy, to one of these monitoring reports, rather than me just flat out saying no, because I just fundamentally don't believe in the way it's done. If that makes sense.
Yes, there's one
Okay.
solution. Anybody else want to offer a solution? So let me think on it and how we can bring it back then. Can you reduce it to writing and email me? Is that a problem? Thank you. And then I can figure out a way, maybe we can have a discussion about DOEs in the next month or two. Okay? Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. At this point, I'll just pull the item. Is that it? Does anyone object to that? No. Okay. So on to 9.6, California Office to Reform Education Core waiver update. It's an information item with a 5-minute presentation, 5-minute discussion. It's Superintendent Ray.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I'm aware of the hour, but I must say that the presentation will probably take a little more than 5 minutes, maybe about 8. I'll read quickly. Tonight, I am pleased to update the board on the school quality improvement system, our district's waiver from No Child Left Behind. As you know by now, Sacramento City Unified is part of a group of school districts named CORE, or the California Office to Reform Education, that has been granted a 1-year waiver from No Child Left Behind by the U.S. Department of Education. The decision to grant this waiver was a groundbreaking one by the Department of Education, as previously only state education departments had been granted this flexibility. No Child Left Behind, as you know, was one of the flagship education policies of the George W. Bush administration. Passed into law in 2001, it laid out a rigid set of academic targets that schools and districts must meet every year, with an ultimate goal of 100% proficiency on state assessments in English language, arts, and math by all subgroups in every school in the country by 2014, right around the corner. One of the fundamental problems, however, with No Child Left Behind is that there are many, and I will say it, many punitive approaches taken towards schools that don't meet their targets. Schools that don't meet all of their targets, and that's 100% of their targets, are labeled as failing and put into program improvement, which sets off a series of mandated steps that a district and therefore schools must take in order to improve and meet these federal guidelines. These steps include an annual notification to parents at schools that are in program improvement, essentially saying that their child's school or their child's classroom is a failure without the appropriate context of the challenges that those children perhaps may face. For example, a school can miss only one target in one subgroup, and it may not even have to do with an assessment, but how many students have taken that assessment. Despite its huge overall growth, and it's still a failure in the eyes of the federal government. Last year, as an example, Sam Brannan Middle School met 25 of 29 of its subgroup targets, and it increased its API, Academic Performance Index, by 20 points, yet it still remains in program improvement and is considered by the federal government to be a failure. Sam Brannan, as we know, is not a failing school, and Sam Brannan, in fact, is a school that is on the rise. On top of it all, schools rarely make it out of program improvement. It's usually a lifetime sentence, although fortunately 2 schools in our district, Edward Kimball and Father Keith Buchanan, have made it out of program improvement, but that's an exception, certainly not the norm. No Child Left Behind doesn't take into account the classroom that may have students 2 or 3 or 4 years behind grade level. And yet, despite heroic efforts by our teachers to move those children up 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 grade levels, if they move them up 2 or 3, but the child is 4 years behind, guess what? That school's labeled a failure. Is that the kind of signal that we want to send to our children and our hardworking teachers? Districts in program improvement are also required to set aside a large percentage of federal Title I dollars, in our case approximately $4 million, to pay for targeted interventions to support the needs of kids at these schools and also to provide transportation out of these so-called labeled failing schools. The lion's share of these resources go to private tutoring companies called Supplemental Educational Service Providers, or SES, who are charged with, as the name implies, supplementing students' in-school education. Sounds good in theory, but in reality, local districts like ours have no voice in determining who these SES providers are, how their success, if there is any, is even measured, or whether or not their practices and strategies are aligned with the district's overall strategies and objectives. You may have seen a recent article in the Sacramento Bee about these vendors. Our district must also set aside resources so that we can transport students from these program improvement schools to non-program improvement schools elsewhere in our district, if they so choose. Our waiver frees us from these obligations. So what is the waiver? Before I begin, I want to remind everybody that they can read the entire waiver, word for word, on our district's website. But it's 200 pages long, so we didn't print it this evening. The School Quality Improvement System, as it has been called, is organized into 3 principles. First, college and career-ready expectations for all students. Differentiated recognition, accountability, and support. And 3, supporting effective education and leadership. I want to walk through these principles. Principle number 1 is the work we are already doing with our Common Core implementation and our work around social emotional learning, or our whole child approach. Whole child means that every student learns in an environment that is physically and emotionally safe for both children and adults. That every student learns about and practices healthy living. That every student is actively engaged in learning and connected to school and the community. And every student is challenged academically and prepared for success in college and careers. On the academic side, we're fulfilling these commitments through implementation of the Common Core state standards. The Common Core standards, as we all know them, are more rigorous than the current California content standards. The standards require more student-centered learning, which is a shift for both our teachers and our students. Students are being asked to research, to analyze, to problem solve, to think critically, create, use technology, and write. It's a shift away from rote memorization of information to analyzing more information, being able to inquire and apply and demonstrate with evidence how they can know and apply that new knowledge. And as you know, we're entering our 4th year of our implementation, and we're heading into our pivotal period with statewide implementation and new assessments just around the corner in the 2014-15 school year. In fact, we had 2 full days of training this week for our principals and over a series of 17 different trainings this summer for our teachers. And as we implement the Common Core, we will see more and more of our students struggling with this work that they are unaccustomed to doing. Students will be asked to perform complex and difficult tasks. We'll likely see our teachers struggle as well with new material, new lessons plans, and they're helping to develop and shape new assessments. It's a big lift and a big shift. And as our classrooms become more and more student-focused and less teacher-driven, we might see challenges in classroom management arise. And that's why our social and emotional learning initiative is the critical other half of our shift away from the no child to the whole child. You can't get kids to take the kind of risks that they need to do, the risks that lead to leaps and lifetime learners, unless your classrooms are safe and for them emotionally and socially, and they have the social and emotional skills to do the work. We're expanding our SEL initiative to 15 schools this school year, including all of our receiving schools and schools that are in the Burbank feeder pattern. Eventually, we'll bring SEL to every one of our schools in the district. Common Core and SEL, a whole child education, make up the first pillar of our strategic plan, Career and College Ready Students. Preparing every student for careers in college remains our main commitment to our community, and it's our focus and it's our goal. This holistic approach is embedded in Principle 1 of the waiver. This was done very intentionally. The waiver is designed around the work that is already happening in our district and will continue to in all of our schools. And to keep us on track for achieving this goal, we need a system for qualifying and quantifying our work. And that's where Principle 2, differentiated recognition, accountability, and support comes in. At its core, this principle is about replacing the most punitive elements of No Child Left Behind and replacing it with a system that measures schools on many, many different metrics, not just state test scores. It also lays out a system for using our data to support schools, not chastise them. In our district, this work has already begun as we begin to create a balanced accountability framework, which we are calling a Guide to Success, which will provide us with clear, measurable data points that we can monitor to understand our progress, our strengths, and our weaknesses. We'll have a more detailed presentation to the board and public about this work in the coming weeks, but I'll touch on it in a bit as it is aligned with the work of Principle 2 of the No Child Left Behind waiver. Building a framework like this has been a goal since we wrote the strategic plan 3.5 years ago. Early on, we started with our school quality review process, or SQR, because we knew that there were things happening in our schools and in our classrooms every day that weren't being measured, that weren't being recognized or replicated simply by state assessments. How do we know if we're preparing children for careers in college if we don't have meaningful data in order to track and support that claim? Having this framework and building on our work will allow us to focus our resources on what in fact is working. The guide will also look at the district first and then examine our school sites, and that's deliberate. We can't hold or expect to hold our school sites accountable until we evaluate the district's ability to support our school sites. At the site level, we will focus on career and college readiness, engagement, and transformation. Schools already do a lot of their own analysis and inquiry, but they're generally limited to looking at CST scores. The guide will broaden that inquiry process to include many, many more areas. For example, our social and emotional standards, AP tests, IB benchmarks, growth by our English language learners, literacy levels, student portfolios, and culture and climate metrics. It's a much more holistic approach to getting the information we need to reflect and make adjustments to learning and teaching. What we do is start with a career and college ready senior and map backwards to see how that student gets to graduation day with a college acceptance letter in their hand. What did that student need to do and understand and learn when they were in preschool? What academic skills, what life skills, what content knowledge, what supports from the site and the district are necessary to guide these children along this continuum and this roadmap. And once we have the data and the ability to analyze it, schools will end up somewhere on a spectrum for career and college readiness, which will align with the classification model that's laid out in Principle 2 of the NCLB waiver. This new framework will allow us to focus supports where they are needed most and where they are working. With this waiver, we're not looking to escape from accountability. Instead, we're actually moving to a new system with a higher level of shared responsibility and accountability built on what Michael Fullen calls the right drivers. For example, our efforts to close achievement gaps will be more robust as a result of this waiver. In fact, we're reducing the size of statistically significant subgroups from 100 to 20. Let me repeat, we're reducing the size of what is now a statistically significant subgroup that requires 100 students, in fact, moving it down to 20. We estimate that this means we can track the growth of an additional 10,000 more students than were under No Child Left Behind. Schools that were doing a good job moving kids towards career and college readiness don't need a lot of guidance from the district. They're doing just fine. But other schools will need more support and more guidance. Again, it's not about judging, which is the current system under No Child Left Behind. It's about providing targeted, sensible, and focused support based on what the analytics are showing us. Again, we'll be using the model from our successful SQR and now our network structure, where principals and schools are sharing and collaborating and learning and growing together. That's already in place to build peer review teams, which will provide support to struggling schools with a focus on collaboration and continuous improvement, a big shift from No Child Left Behind. This is about our struggling schools learning best practices and creating more opportunities to expand and replicate successful programs. The work in creating the Guide to Success and aligning it with Principle 2 is just in its early stages. We'll be engaging in a thorough community planning process to gather stakeholder feedback on this work. As this work continues, we'll bring it back to the board for updates and more information. The third principle, supporting effective instruction and leadership, has to do with changing our principal and teacher evaluation tools and processes to tie it more closely to our work. And I know this is a sensitive topic and one that inspires strong reactions from many people. And I've said many times, and I continue to believe, that academic results cannot be the only measurement of an educator's effectiveness. Just as we need to look at our schools in a holistic manner, we need to look at multiple measures to determine what is working in our schools and in our classrooms. Let me be clear that any changes to our principal and teacher evaluation models must be negotiated with our unions and agreed to by our unions. Nothing in the waiver supersedes our union contracts. The waiver lays out some non-negotiables with regards to the development of these tools, but our district has broad discretion to work together on a model that meets our local needs and fits into our local context. For example, we've budgeted resources to collaborate, develop, and pilot a peer assistance and review program called PAR this year with our teachers union to help inform and guide these efforts. We look forward to starting these conversations as soon as possible. What does the core waiver mean for our schools? To start, we've informed our SES providers that we will be no longer contracting with them for their services for the upcoming school year. As a result of our waiver from No Child Left Behind, we get to decide what academic interventions will replace the SES providers and how we hold ourselves accountable for student learning. We no longer have to spend millions on these SES tutors, many of whom have no accountability for raising the bar for our kids. Academic supports for our neediest students will continue, however, now with more local control on how we spend our limited and precious dollars. So what will these interventions be? We are now working to identify potential interventions and a process to get lots of feedback before bringing a plan to the board later this fall. We'll be looking to task force such as our Achievement Gap Task Force for ideas and recommendations. And we'll be holding conversations and discussions with our DAC, our PTA, and our other advisory groups and stakeholder organizations. It'll be my recommendation that the interventions focus on extended learning opportunities for kids. That's before school, after school, and summer school programs. We will start by looking at our successful programs already in place, but we'll look to have those discussions, as I said, with as many different people and stakeholders before identifying what a new model will look like. Second, there is currently no plan, and I want to repeat, no plan to discontinue transportation that students are currently receiving as a result of their home schools program improvement status. We will not be pulling the rug out from families who are expecting this service just a few weeks before school starts. We will be reviewing this component of NCLB policy to determine how best to serve our students and our families. I know there are still many more questions about the waiver and what it means and how it will play out at individual school sites. And we'll be having a lot more discussion on these topics over the coming weeks and months. So what are our next steps? Of course, our work with Common Core and social emotional learning implementation will continue. We'll be reaching out to our collective bargaining partners to begin discussions on developing our PAR and a new evaluation tool and processes. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be engaging in a broad outreach with regards to possible interventions to replace SES providers with a recommended focus on extended learning opportunities. We'll continue the development of our Guide to Success, and the outreach in that area will begin as well. We'll come back to the board this fall with an update on all these efforts. And finally, we'll communicate regularly with our parents, our students, our school staff, and community about the work and the impacts on our individual students. As I mentioned earlier, there's more information, including the waiver itself, on our district website, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
We have public comment.
Yes, we have two comments on this item from Nikki Malevsky and Carlos Rico.
Good evening, board members, President Cuneo and Superintendent Raymond. I'm Nikki Malevsky, President of Sacramento City Teachers Association, and I wish I was here to focus on the strong collaborative work that we've been doing. If I was, I would not hesitate to commend HR and the special ed department for its hard and fast work in addressing our needs for more special education teachers. The district recognized the need, brainstormed with us, prepared a joint letter to encourage our experienced and laid-off teachers to apply for special ed credentials. I would be the first to thank the HR department for its speedy work in reaching out to National University to create a program tailored to meet the needs of our teachers and our district so that experienced teachers could provide the necessary services for our students. Instead, I'm here to express our disappointment that our district, along with 7 others, and the consultants of CORE, have applied for a waiver for the NCLB that commits our district to be driven by expectations we do not believe in. Specifically, the part of the waiver that attempts to tie a portion of the teacher's evaluations to student test scores. It is not only a divisive distraction, but it is bad for students. Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that test-based evaluations models are inaccurate and ineffective. We see no reason to pursue a course that makes the already high-stakes testing even more high-stakes. I've talked with many of you. I know that you also do not believe that test scores are an accurate representation of student learning. Even the superintendent has expressed doubt about the validity of test scores being used to assess students and teachers. So if teachers, administrators, and increasingly parents agree that this is not the way to go, why are we committing to requirements that distract us from the important work of implementing Common Core and collaborating to support teachers and students? Quite frankly, this is a step backwards. It is our hope that we can work together to use the ongoing additional resources and flexibility provided by the new local control funding formula to implement Common Core, provide meaningful staff development, restore instructional minutes, and begin to reduce our class sizes back to reasonable levels. However, these efforts will require all of our focus and energy, and we cannot afford to be distracted by divisive issue that we know is not helpful to students and teachers. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Rico. I'm a teacher and a parent in the district. I have a question about this waiver. I understand that our superintendent is a member of CORE, but did our district have a vote to be part of this organization? Did you vote on this? Did you vote to authorize the pursue this waiver? And lastly, did you vote to accept this waiver and the changes it's bringing to our district? That's a question I'd like to be answered at some point. It doesn't have to be today, but I'd like to find that out. And is it legal without having a conversation first, publicly, before doing this waiver. I think you as trustees are the oversight, or you oversight what happens to this district, and for some reason, I think something's been skipped here, especially with public input. Again, just like the school closures, the public and the employees are being left out of this process, and this is not transparent. Thank you.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cunyo. Superintendent, I think, didn't you come before the board a couple of years with something like this?
That was actually Race to the Top.
Oh, okay. I think what I know about working with the federal level people at the executive level of the government, they want to see that we're working in collaboration with all of our partners. To have our teachers union come forward and say they weren't included in this process concerns me. I really would like to have seen you work with them. I really think that you have the ability to do this, and that when we present this to our district, then we have a unified front. Not only does it affect the teachers, though, it also affects SEIU because of special ed, and we have assistants in the classrooms. I'd like to see the collaboration before we get to the point of presentation, or before we go to the point of asking for the waiver, so that you have that genuine interaction, and it's truly different, and we've got the collaboration moving forward. It concerns me a little bit more because we're looking at local control funding. It's a big thing to undertaking. We're changing our system, and then we're going to Common Core standards. It's another big undertaking. And then we're going to implement a different model of accountability. And we just had a demonstration earlier tonight that even with school closures, we can't guarantee a perfect outcome. So I really commend you for your work that you've done. I think that the direction in which you want to go forward is positive for the district, positive for children. But when we're not including our partners, it makes it difficult to implement. And then all your hard work doesn't go toward a 100% positive outcome. And so I think those would be my words of advice to you, is that you include everybody when you're going through this process. So that way it's a guaranteed success for the children overall, but it's a guaranteed success for you and the partners that you engage with in this district as well.
Member Pritchett.
Thank you. I just have a logistical question that the superintendent can answer. In regards to teacher evaluations and test scores, which was stated earlier, how is that rated? Is it just in regards specifically test scores? Is it a rise in test scores? Do they have to receive ACE test scores?
So there is a lot of flexibility in there. Were two ways that assessments could be utilized as part of the waiver. They could be contribute up to 20% of an educator's evaluation, to the extent that they are available in that grade level and in that subject matter. The other way is called the Massachusetts model, and in that case, an evaluation process is established that could involve a principal observation. It could involve peer review and observation. It could also involve student and family surveys. And then what happens then is that as those multiple measures are then aggregated and provide an evaluation, there is then a correlation, a look, to the extent that there are assessments available to, in other words, like a quality check to make sure that the evaluation process, which included, say, observation, peer review, student surveys, whatever the metrics are that are established, I'll look to see if there's any kind of correlation or not. And if there isn't a correlation, it then allows those to look at the evaluation process to make sure that it was done in a fair way. So it acts as a check, and it's been very effective. In fact, that's the model that I am very, very supportive of and in favor of. So not a direct tie of test scores to the evaluation, but in a correlation way. Anyway, those are all either one of those, and then what those multiple measures are the subject of conversation and negotiation to come up with a tool that truly does support the improvement of teaching and learning.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question in regard to the program improvement. Does the core waiver then disallow the federal government from designating some of our schools as being in program improvement?
We have established what will be our own standard. So based upon where a school is along this continuum, they would fall into one of three different categories.
So it kind of supersedes the federal government?
Yes, it does. We get to establish our own way of ranking schools.
And then I understand that there's no current plan to discontinue transportation. Is there any plan in regard to future years?
Right now, there is not a plan to expand it. And there is not a plan to discontinue it. And I think that's something that we'll want to have more dialogue and conversation with our community and our stakeholders on what makes the most sense there.
Yeah, when I was reviewing the plan, that was one of the sticking points that I had was that if we are going to discontinue transportation for program improvement students, I hope it's done with a lot of input and buy-in from the families and the students that are affected. I, for one, am a little dubious of that piece of the waiver. Member Hanson, did you want to go, or do you want me to finish my thought? Okay. So, in general, I think we can have a large debate about the wisdom of the federal government's intrusion into the local education system, but the reality is it's here, and it's been fairly punitive in nature for many years. I'm hopeful in regard to the movement away from a punitive orientation towards a more improvement-based system that looks to just expand on capacity and capabilities, both in the classroom, but at the district level and throughout our education system. I'm in wholehearted agreement in regard to the supplemental education services and our ability to terminate contracts and services with providers that have proven not to assist our kids in learning and have no relationship or correlation to anything that's going on in the classroom. I do understand, I mean, the big sticking point is obviously going to be the new evaluation tools going forward. I've been pretty vocal and straightforward in how I feel about new evaluation tools. I think they need to be done. I'm a supporter of the PAR program. I'm a supporter of it because it gives teachers due process and allows them not to be kind of pushed out by dictatorial or overbearing or just principals who misjudge them. I would really urge this district and the teachers to sit down and try to have discussions around the new evaluation tools. I really believe that we need to start to focus on what quality means in our local classroom and what that means for our local school district. Right now, there are little to no discussions about what quality means in our classrooms. And if we can come up with a multi-measurement tool to figure out what quality in a classroom looks like and start to align our teaching practices as well as our professional development around that definition, I think our students will be all the better for it. I'm mindful going forward of the precipitous drop in test scores in the state of New York upon the implementation of Common Core. I fully expect that to happen in this district. I don't think it should be used punitively. I don't think it should be used as a gotcha to show that either Common Core is bad or a teacher is bad. It's going to come, and we're going to have to deal with it and try to move forward. But that's the shift that I like in the core waiver. It's a shift away from punitive measures towards self-improvement measures and towards a continuous conversation about how we get better every single day and how we start to try to bring some coherence between the classroom, some coherence between our after-school providers, so that at the end of the day, the kids and their families can be given the best education and the education that they deserve in our local schools. With that, Mr. Hanson, Board Member Hanson.
Thank you. Just one quick aside to Member Rodriguez. Just you might want to check in with get filled in from the superintendent during if you had the chance to attend the executive session. I think some of your concerns and questions would have been addressed. I think you can get some information on that that'll help clarify for you. I had a question about the length of the waiver that I'd heard before that it was 1 year, 2 year. I heard you clarify and say it was 1 year. Given the length of time that the waiver process took, is it, since it's just a 1 year waiver, when's the start date and end date, and what would be the process for looking at an additional year, since a year really obviously goes pretty quickly?
It does. It's kind of, again, unprecedented. I mean, states received multiple year waivers. So, why the secretary chose to do 1 year, I'm not really sure. I think he had honestly a lot of pressure to say no, but he didn't. So, they're going to want to see the kind of progress that we're making, progress with our Common Core implementation. We want to see how we're moving forward with developing our guide to success, and they're going to want to see progress on what we're doing to develop new tools to support teaching and learning. So, my sense is they'll like what on what they'll see, and we're going to be working hard as individual districts, and then as a collaborative of 7 districts, 8 districts that are sharing the work and sharing the learning. And the secretary and his staff will review it in the spring. But we have the waiver for this year, and we intend to take advantage of this truly historic opportunity.
Member Rodriguez.
It's a simple question. Are we going to vote on this at any point? Because this is a policy change for the district, and if the board does not approve of this, then how are we going to govern in the future? Executive team, I think that should have been one of the things. It should have been for information discussion tonight, rather than we did this, we've notified this, and that's my other concern. Right. And the other thing about working collaboratively with partners is essential, regardless of what the feedback is. The key to implementation is those who are closest to the task, and I know that our superintendent has it within him to do so. He needs support to get there, and we can't put the cart in front of the horse all the time. We have to make sure that it's a team that puts that cart there onto the horse.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions. Item 10.0, business and financial information reports. They have been received. We have Member Pritchett.
I just wanted to point out that on the last 2 agendas, there has been no board sharing. Can we have it back on the agenda at the next board meeting?
Yes, it's usually the first board meeting.
It wasn't on the last one, though. Okay.
Do you want to share? Okay. We also, just for the record, cut out the president's report and the superintendent's report too. So. Sure. I didn't know you wanted to listen to me. Member Hanson.
I'll save the rest of my report out for the next meeting, but I had 2 things that are timely, so I want to just quickly say those. One, I'm doing my 3rd monthly event with Latata Floyd students and families. I'm hosting a barbecue and movie night on Wednesday, August 28th at 6 p.m. in New Helvetia. So I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to come to that. We've had some really fun events. We did a barbecue and pool night. We had reserved the pool for the families there. We had 100 people in attendance, so it was really, really fun, and I expect this next one will be a good time too. And then yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit the Cerna Center. My godson is moving up here, and I was at the Cerna Center with his guardian to register him for high school. He's going to be going to one of our high schools, one of the schools in my district. I'm excited. He'll get some extra supervision. And, I didn't tell the staff, that I was a board member, and just wanted to say that it went very smooth. I was very impressed with the process of the staff. It's obviously, it can be a contentious, or maybe not contentious, but it's kind of a stressful situation. There's a lot of forms that parents have to bring to register students. A lot of people were moving into the district, and I wanted to introduce myself on the way back out just to tell them I was impressed with their work, and just wanted to let the superintendent and staff know they're doing a good job over there, and it's not easy working over there too. So just want to say I had a good experience.
What time was that event at Leotata Floyd? And what movie? And Vice President Wu wants to know what movie you're.
We're still letting the students select the movie. Now, the last time we did a movie night, they picked Wreck-It Ralph, which I've understood they've seen 5 times, but they picked it anyways because I guess you just can't see Wreck-It Ralph enough. But who knows what they'll pick? But it's 6 p.m. on Wednesday the 28th. And so the students are still deciding what movie they want to see. There'll be a barbecue and a movie.
Thank you. Item 11.0, future board meetings, dates, and locations. There is a change to the next board meeting. It will be on September 12th, 2013 at 4:30 p.m. Closed session, 6:30 p.m. Open session here at the Cerna Center. September 19th, 2013, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. open session again here at the Cerna Center. We don't have a student board member.
She wanted me to adjourn in her honor.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn in her honor. I will second that motion.